Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You're sitting side saddle, huh?
Yeah, I'm feeling like a bit of a leaner today. We'll see. I might change my mind.
So what you been up to?
What have I been up to? So I'm teaching a course right now that's very fun because I'm essentially distilling an undergraduate degree program into like one online course. So right now we're in biochem, but we basically started with like intro bio, chemistry, organic chemistry, and now we're in biochem. And we're basically working our way up to like a quantum and circadian biology, like advanced lectures.
Oh, wow.
So it's been really great because I'm also getting to revisit a lot of this information I haven't seen since undergrad, but with like new eyes, since I kind of fell down Dr. Kruse's rabbit hole and kind of revisited everything I thought was true. Now as I'm like studying these topics again and like preparing for class, I'm realizing like how many more things are connected that I never even realized when I was first taking the courses. Because also in undergrad, I feel like you're taking so many courses at once and you don't really necessarily see the why or like the interesting aspects of those topics, but you're just like, I need to get the grade, right? So you're focused on memorizing the stuff, like putting the pieces together that you need in order to get a good grade, but you're not necessarily like integrating it in a meaningful way. And so I've found that very rewarding, being able to go back through these topics. And actually, we watched a couple of Professor Dave's videos in class because just like as an addition to help solidify certain concepts in chemistry in particular, I think we were referencing some of Dave's stuff.
So for people who, last time you were here was like a year and a half ago,
It's
roughly, maybe less than that, maybe like a year ago.
Yeah.
For people that are new, and for all the people out there that worship credentialism, why don't you give your creds?
Sure. So I did my PhD at Princeton in the molecular biology department, but my lab was actually in the chem department. So my advisor was essentially kind of like a split faculty across the genomics and chemistry departments. So my lab, the Rabinowitz lab, studied metabolism, and specifically I was looking at the metabolic effects of different dietary and kind of exercise inputs as well. So we were doing like sedentary versus exercise, as well as keto versus high carb diets. And we were essentially looking to see how tissue metabolism changed and how like metabolic control varies across these very disparate conditions. So that's what I did my PhD. And I also wrapped up with some studies on, we were essentially doing pharmacokinetics of endogenous metabolites. So most of the time when you're studying pharmacokinetics, it's in the context of drug metabolism. So at like big pharma, essentially, if you have a drug candidate, you want to look how it's metabolized, how it's cleared, how long it's in the system, where it's being metabolized, things like that. But instead, we were kind of looking at that lens and putting it over the metabolites that are naturally in the bloodstream, like glucose, fatty acids, ketone bodies, amino acids, and trying to essentially model their behavior in like this complex system in an organism. So that's where I left off. Then I took a gap year, and I went back for my postdoc at UPenn in 2023, where for a year I worked on essentially building out a tech platform to help with multi-omics screening. So when I say multi-omics, what I mean is essentially genomics, metabolomics, and proteomics all in one assay, so that you can essentially, for example, look at patient tumors. And you can look at one slice of tumor and assess all of these different levels, like the protein content, the genetic sequencing, as well as the metabolite levels as well. So then you could overlay all that data and then come to better conclusions about what treatments might be best, for example. However, during that time, I started that postdoc in January 23. And then in April is when I found Dr. Kruse's work, and like it flipped my world upside down. So kind of the rest of that postdoc, I was just like enamored with this other information that I was assimilating and researching. Yeah. And then it was kind of a natural progression of me leaving and just focusing full time on these topics of quantum and circadian biology and mitochondrial medicine, et cetera.
Yeah. And for people that aren't aware of him, his high level view on things is what?
Yeah. So he's kind of pioneering theoretical quantum biology. So kind of looking at like the fundamental aspects of biology as it relates to photons and electrons, essentially.
Yeah.
Ultimately culminating in like actionable practices related to reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with the sun, grounding, just living a life that is conducive and in alignment with nature versus kind of breaking all of nature's rules and living a more modern lifestyle, which basically you can choose to do that, but his point of view is like, if you don't have informed consent around how harmful that is for you and like why you're getting all of these illnesses in like 20-year-olds or even in children, that understanding needs to kind of be shared and spread so that we can then make at least informed decisions around, you know, if you want to get sick and make these kind of trade-offs, you can do that. Yeah. But it's not correct from a biology standpoint.
It's just so funny to me. I've noticed it so much lately, you know, over the last few years, is that like everyone's trying to get back to nature, right? Like we're simultaneously on this never-ending race to progress technologically, but at the same time, we're also we know it's better to get back to nature, but we're still on this trajectory. So we're just selling more and more bullshit. People are just selling more, you know, technical tools and gadgets and things like this and pills and drugs to help us get more, you know, back to nature. But, you know, who knows if any of that really works. One thing that you can notice, though, is that like one of the things that I always talk about is like if you ever get out of the US or out of your city and you go to like some foreign third world country for a couple weeks and you come back home, it's like depressing.
You could feel the difference big time.
It's depressing.
I agree.
And I think that's just, you know, one of the biggest red flags that we're in a very shitty, toxic environment.
And we're all like kind of desensitized from that reality as well. I actually had the same exact experience when I visited Jack down in El Salvador in, it was Thanksgiving of 24. And that was the first time I'd been out of the country. I'd been to like Canada, but I never really been out of the country. And so I was kind of, you know, worried because I feel like in the past, El Salvador kind of had a reputation, obviously, of being unsafe and kind of chaotic. Obviously, Bukele has gone in and, according to some, as a dictator. But I mean, you got to do what you got to do, I guess, at some level to make corrections and kind of restore balance in society. So I went down there and just like had an incredible experience. And when I came home, I legit felt super depressed for like multiple days. It was crazy. It kind of felt like just like a dark cloud. Also, because I went during basically the winter, this beautiful, like, you know, rural environment, the beaches, the black sand beaches, the volcanoes, just like the great company and just like the high energy. And then going home to like kind of bleak, like dead New Jersey in the winter. It was just,
oh my God,
the contrast was too much.
Yeah, there is something to be said about the impact that it has on you when you go to places like that where it's just different.
Yeah, it makes you also realize that you're choosing to live how you're living, right? Like you could make a different reality for yourself if you were so inclined. But obviously there's lots of amenities in the US that I think people enjoy, but at some level you have to make a decision of what's most important. The other really cool thing about my time in El Salvador that I noticed was because there's a lot of volcanic activity down there, it's like the land of volcanoes, which was one of the reasons why Jack picked it, because basically you get a ton of magnetic flux from these volcanic rich areas. That's like manna for the mitochondria that helps them work better. And we talked about, like kind of like the food of life. Oh. Yeah. And so when I went down there, I had food poisoning a couple months before I left. And my gut was just not really right since then. Literally less than 2 days being down there, all of my gut symptoms went away. And the other really cool thing that happened was I had lived in black mold during undergrad. And I had like this mole on my hairline right here that had developed. And it was probably like a low-grade basal cell carcinoma, I'm going to guess. It was dark. It was kind of scaly. But it wasn't really doing anything. And I'm like very against going to a doctor unless I'm dying, basically. So I'm like, I'm just going to let it be or whatever. If it starts getting worse, then I'll consider getting it checked out. Literally on my 8th day in El Salvador, it shriveled up and fell off my head.
Whoa.
I did nothing for it. Like I was literally just existing down there, grounding. We hiked some volcanoes. We went to the volcanic beaches. Like we were in the water, in the sun. That's all I was doing. And I just had these very dramatic and palpable effects on my health that like really sold me on wanting to ideally in the long term set up shop down there at least part-time. Yeah,
totally. You can eat garbage down there and you still feel great.
Right.
Unlike here.
Well, that's the thing. That's why Jack always says like it's not the food first as like the main thing, because if you correct the environment or you get in the correct environment, you can tolerate so much more. And that's literally by optimizing those mitochondrial engines. And also, of course, I'm sure there's some aspect of like there's less chemicals on wheat products and just like on their crops in general in these parts of the world that aren't giving like these negative effects on the microbiome.
And they don't, we looked this up actually a couple podcasts ago, but we found out that they're one of the countries that does not put the fluoride in the water.
That's interesting.
So I don't know how much that has to do with
Y'all don't have fluoride down here anymore too, right?
I think we do.
Really? I thought they were taking it out.
Does fluoride still exist in Florida water, Steve? See if we can find out.
Damn.
Yeah, no, I don't think they got rid of it. And I don't know. That's like one of the things that if you talk about it, people like look at you like you're a fool or whatever. They don't know.
That's
like
crazy.
It's one of the big conspiracies, but
it's not even, because if you go on PubMed, there's dozens of articles saying here are the trade-offs of fluoride exposure, especially at like low levels all the time, for like neurocognitive effects. Yeah, it is still in Florida.
It exists, but it is no longer added, so it's going to slowly deplete.
So we
over
got
time.
natural fluoride. Is that what they're saying?
I think it's probably still in it just from when it was being added previously.
So effective July 1st last year, Florida enacted the law, Bill 700, that prohibits local governments and public water systems from adding fluoride to their water supplies.
Yeah.
Bro, for my friend, I have a friend who's a concrete company, and they build the wastewater treatment centers.
Okay.
So like all the giant like concrete tanks that recycle all the shit water. And they literally dump giant vats of chemicals, all kinds of chemicals in those things to recycle that water. So, I mean, if you want to say fluoride's bad, I don't know what other kind of concoctions they're throwing in there, but it's a lot.
Yeah, there's lots of like halogenated compounds that go in, like chlorine-based and maybe bromine-based as well, that are used to like sanitize the water. I mean, all of that shit's bad. Like, we use a reverse osmosis at our house if we're going to use tap water for like cooking, and like filter our shower heads and everything, because none of that's good for the hair, for the skin, for you to breathe in. Obviously, if you're showering, all that steam is like volatilizing those chemicals too, especially like the chlorine and bromine ones. They're very volatile, so they just go into the gas phase pretty easily. So you're inhaling that and like absorbing it through your skin, and it's all bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
No bueno.
No. And like other water supplies throughout the world, they don't do that same stuff at all.
And I'm sure it has to have some sort of impact.
Yeah.
So what, again, what were you saying that those PubMed things said about exposure to fluoride?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, from a data perspective with regards to fluoride and dental health, which is their rationale for using it, there is some data to suggest that topical fluoride in high concentrations on the teeth may help with mineralization, although it creates like a fake version of the mineral that the tooth naturally has, which is a hydroxyapatite. So it's like a fluoridated version of that gets created, which, you know, you can make an argument maybe that's not natural or optimal even, but even if you're just looking at like cavity incidence, for example, you could say, okay, maybe topical fluoride can help to reduce cavities. There's no data at all that would suggest that ingesting low levels of fluoride all the time does anything for the teeth. So
ingesting it,
yeah, and I think that data that was initially like motivating the addition of fluoride to water was something like they surveyed municipalities and looked at natural fluoride levels in the water, and they showed that essentially that there may be some association with lower levels of dental issues in communities that had naturally higher fluoride levels. But as far as I know, that data was actually quite kind of spurious and not really clear.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other things you can do for your teeth. And actually, this is related to Becker's work, which we may talk about a little bit later, with bone and ultimately with teeth as well, that like these are working at a biophysics level. And if the biophysics of your environment are incorrect, like, for example, from non-native EMFs or indoor living, blue light, like not being grounded, et cetera, then that's going to compromise these kind of crystal structures in the body at the level of the bone and the teeth, for example, and make them higher porosity. And but the story about cavities is like, there's so much that could be said with regards to like impacts. Dry mouth breathing, oral microbiome, obviously food consumption, because depending on what's in your mouth and how long it's sitting in your mouth, those microbes can, for example, metabolize sugar and starch into acids like lactic acid, lactate, and other ones as well. And that basically makes the mouth more acidic, which naturally drives the teeth towards demineralization. Saliva is required to actually support remineralization. It creates a slightly alkaline pH to offset that. So if you combine like mouth breathing with eating like a very high carbohydrate diet, you're kind of just asking for issues in that department.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's just so many things out there that everyone's worried about as far as like health wise and staying healthy. And, you know, even people with kids, you know, there's like this, you know, most moms, there's like a whole group of moms on the internet that are always like trying to, you know, project how much more conscious they are of their kids' diet and their kids' health and all this stuff, making TikTok reels about, look what I packed my kid for lunch and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, it makes me feel guilty sometimes when I see that. Like, oh shit, I made my kid a peanut butter and jelly today. And then I think about, you know, when I was a kid, I ate fucking Chef Boyardee every single day for at least 20 years of my life. Just utter trash. I ate Pop-Tarts and Chef Boyardee was probably a staple of my diet, and some Easy Mac here and there. And I'm fine now. So I think human beings are a lot more adaptable than we think. Like we can, as long as we're not like we're not like riddled with comorbidities and all kinds of other diseases, I think that we're able to reset ourselves pretty quickly.
I switched from nicotine pouches to ultra pouches a while ago, and something amazing happened. I stopped feeling on edge, my heart rate wouldn't randomly spike anymore, and I started getting way better pumps in at the gym. That's because nicotine is vasoconstrictive, and I had to learn the hard way that nicotine is horrible for pre-workout. Ultra is a nicotine-free pouch with 0 nicotine and 0 caffeine. I still get that great pouch experience I love, the flavor, the burn, the little kick, but without the jittery, on-edge feeling or dealing with the crash or the vasoconstrictive aspect you get from nicotine pouches, which is what really screws up my workouts. They use nootropics and adaptogens designed to deliver a smooth energy and mental clarity for 1 to 2 hours. I'll throw one in before a workout or when I need to lock in for a work day. And what surprised me the most was how much steadier my energy was throughout the day. Better sleep, better workouts, and my body just feels better because I'm not jacking myself up on nicotine and caffeine late into the afternoon. And I've really been digging this tropical flavor. It's delicious. Ultra is the ultimate guilt-free pouch, delivering instant focus and mental clarity without nicotine or caffeine. New customers can use the code DANNY to get 15% off at takeultra.com. That's spelled TAKEULTRA.com for 15% off with the code DANNY. After you purchase, they're going to ask where you heard about them. Please help support our show and tell them we sent you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say humans are extremely resilient. However, now, especially for kids today, it's like basically an all-out assault on their biology and everybody's biology, but especially, you know, if we're talking about kids, that's their formative years. They're still developing. They're still kind of setting the tone for their lifelong health.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about issues like the non-native EMFs, which are not really publicly discussed as like a major concern. Which is concerning because this has been of concern for literally decades, and there have been whistleblowers on this.
It's just hard because you can't see it. There's so many other things we have to be worried about.
Well,
now we have to be worried about this invisible devil, this non-native EMF.
Well, so here's the thing that, like, the way that I approach this is I don't really want to think about, like, the granular aspects of health. Obviously, I try to buy all of my meat and produce local whenever possible, just because I prefer it. I think it tastes better, and I just like it. I'll spend extra money getting good quality food because it makes me feel good. Having said that, if you invest your money on creating an environment that's conducive to health, then you have so much more bandwidth with regards to what you can get away with without actually feeling symptomatic. And I think that's the biggest problem today is that a lot of people don't actually feel good and they're not healthy. Right. If you do feel good and you are healthy, then obviously maybe you were dealt a better hand of mitochondria at birth, or maybe just, you know, whatever genetic aspects that perhaps gave you more resilience. But a lot of people don't actually have that bandwidth. They're already kind of at they've filled their stress bucket essentially. Because if we think about all of the stressors on our bodies between like social stress, psychological stress, like chemical stress, biophysical stress, like they're all additive. And if the bucket's being filled up in kind of every direction, you're just more likely to fill it up more quickly. And so anything we can do to kind of especially mitigate exposures to things that we know are suboptimal or just downright harmful for our bodies, like, for example, with the non-native EMFs, it's really easy to turn off your Wi-Fi at night. Like, you could literally put it on a timer, like plug it into the timer, and it will just go off while you're sleeping. At least that's 8 hours a day. Where
my bed has Wi-Fi on it.
Your bed has Wi-Fi on it.
Yeah. It's one of those sleep number gimmicks where they you know, connects to your phone.
Oh my God. Have you ever had like a building biologist come to your place?
Yeah, I had Tristan from Daylight come to my house.
So did he check out that bed?
Yeah, he said it's not too bad.
He said it wasn't too high?
The worst areas in my house was where we have baby monitors.
Yeah,
so we moved those to the opposite ends of the kids' rooms.
Okay. Yeah, those are not good. The thing with non-native EMFs that people need to understand too is the inverse square law, which is a law in physics of electromagnetism. Basically says that the closer you are to a source, the higher the dose you're receiving. So I don't know if the bed is measuring low and you're like where you're on it, then maybe it's okay. I mean, I personally wouldn't do that just because it seems like something that's avoidable. I don't, unless you like absolutely love your bed and it's like dramatically improving your sleep relative to other beds. But anytime you can just create some space between yourself and whatever the source of that frequency is, you're going to benefit from that. And actually, like sometimes it can be kind of a rub because, for example, I have a client up in Jersey and I went to go measure EMFs at her house and we just like, you know, kind of set up some spaces for her to ground. And we actually ended up seeing that her kitchen floor was able to be grounded upon because there was just tiles right on the subflooring. And turns out her dogs like literally always lay on that floor. It's kind of like they know or something. But anyways, she has a cell tower that's maybe a quarter to a third of a mile away from her house, but you can see it in the line of vision. And the entire front of her house facing that was just maxing out the meter. Yeah, which is crazy. But the really cool thing and like a great testament to mitigation strategies is that when you went onto her kind of side patio that also is facing that, but there's a bunch of pine trees around it, literally no signal at all. So plants do an incredible job for blocking and reducing EMF burden because they essentially absorb all that frequency themselves.
Yeah, what I thought about those big towers, those big cell towers, is that like as long as you're like in a close proximity, you're safe. But like, because once the way they shoot out the signal or whatever, or whatever the frequency is, it like spreads out the farther it gets. So it's like if you're in like a mile perimeter of it, it's bad. But if you're like right under it, you might be safe.
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
It's the opposite. It's going to be super high if you're right next to it. The one, I guess, kind of exception could be if you're in an urban area, there's like a main tower and then there's repeater towers like every few blocks.
Oh my God, yeah.
That boost the signal back up. So in that way, it could be high away from the tower if you're near a repeater tower, for example.
They stick those things on the top of all the condos and the beach down here.
I actually saw them on top of like a hotel or a condo building. I was like, I can't
make them look like trees.
It's insane. And they try to they paint them the same color as the building to like say, oh, maybe no one will notice it. Oh, I saw the trees too.
They're crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They put them on palm trees. And they put like palm fronds hanging off of them.
We have like the evergreen looking ones up north. It's like very dystopian.
Is Bobby Kennedy correct when he said that the EMF or the 5G passes the blood-brain barrier?
So what 5G does is it opens up the blood-brain barrier.
He said it crosses the blood-brain barrier.
I mean, it's not a physical thing, right?
Okay.
So it's an electromagnetic wave.
Maybe he did say opens up. I don't remember.
I think he did. I could be wrong, but like that research goes back decades to the work of Dr. Alan Fry.
Pull this thing up a little closer.
Oh, yeah, sure. He did some seminal work in this area. And actually, he's still alive. He's like in his 90s and he lives in Maryland. I would like die to talk to him. But essentially, he did work on EMFs back in the day, also the same time that Becker was doing his work as well. And he showed that essentially, if you took his rats, essentially he was doing rat studies and exposed them to certain frequencies that are akin to like Wi-Fi or 5G towers. And he basically showed that the frequencies opened up the blood-brain barrier.
So Kennedy said electromagnetic radiation from wireless technology causes the blood-brain barrier to become permeable.
That's true.
Allowing toxins to enter the brain.
That is actually true.
That's true?
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, Fry's research was literally, I want to say, in the 60s when he did those studies.
So the toxins, it opens it up so toxins can get into your brain. What toxins?
So the blood-brain barrier is a highly specialized barrier that only lets very certain things, like very specific things through. And so when you permeabilize it, you're kind of just leaving it up to probability. Like anything could come through. Doesn't mean it necessarily will. But in Fry's studies, for example, he was taking like an injectable dye. And in the rats that weren't exposed to these frequencies, the dye entered the body. But then when he sacrificed them, that's what it's called in science, kind of creepy.
Yeah.
He sacked the mice and took the brains, and the brains were not stained at all with the dye. And in the mice exposed or the rats exposed, the brains were like stained blue, showing that the dye molecule, which is a big molecule, was able to penetrate through into the brain.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. And presumably this would be relevant to all barrier tissues, not just the brain. So I would imagine the gut barrier is also affected, the skin barrier, the lungs. as well. All of these barrier tissues are kind of co-coordinated, and
they're protecting organs. Is that the idea?
They're managing what is allowed into the body or into the brain in the case of the blood-brain barrier. So they're very, very specific. There's highly specialized organs and tissues that are extremely important for making sure that we don't get issues like immune responses to foods, for example. Like we see a lot of food intolerances right now and food allergies. A lot of those would be kind of non-existent if that gut barrier, for example, was, nice and tight and high integrity. Right. But a bunch of the immune cells in the body, like 80% of them are around the gut lining, just like on the other side inside the body. So if that lining gets opened up, now the immune cells are actually able to potentially interface with more antigens from food that they would have never seen before. And now they're being sensitized to those foods. And then when you eat them again, you're like having a response, for example.
Oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah. Also, all the histamine stuff that people are experiencing, it's like a hugely hot topic. Histamine is essentially the body's first line response to leaky boundaries, leaky barriers. It's trying to defend the inside world from the outside world. And so whenever we get these hyperpermeable barrier tissues, histamine is like the first line of defense to help kind of reduce the amount of stuff coming into the body from the outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why is it happening all of a sudden? You said it's becoming more and more like talked about?
Super
it's happening
common.
more with people now?
Yeah. So you could kind of say it's a combinatorial issue that really started upticking around COVID and like when the jabs were rolled out. And of course, also the 5G rollout happened at the exact same time. We already talked about how these frequencies can open up the barrier tissues. So that's one. And then we also know that spike protein can kind of get in and inflame tissues as well. When you have an inflamed barrier, it also loosens it up. So it's kind of like this negative synergy that's, creating this feed-forward mechanism that could make the issues even worse than they would be from either input individually.
Is that, I remember we had a couple people on that looked at the correlation, but is it true that there was like a spike in soft tissue cancers after the pandemic rolled out and all the jabs and everything?
So I haven't looked at the data, so I can't say for sure if that's like true signal or not. Also, I feel like it's
who was telling
pretty
me
complicated. I mean, it may have been Kevin McKernan.
Yeah, that's probably
because I was going to bring up his work because he at the very least they're doing research to show that like they're finding the proteins from the jabs in the tumors. And like the SV40 promoters, enhancers, things like that.
Right.
So it's pretty.
And good. He was saying that something about what it could do is possibly make something like cancer transmissible.
I mean,
to where you can catch it from somebody. That's what he was saying. And that sounds like something that would happen in a bio lab somewhere.
I've owned this here Ridge wallet years before they ever decided to sponsor this podcast. I've been carrying this thing with me every day for at least 5 years, traveled with it, dropped it, I've beaten it up, and it still works and looks great, just like the same day I bought it. Ridge isn't some gimmicky wallet you have to replace 6 months later. It's genuinely good. And right now, Ridge is bringing back its annual sweepstakes with Tony Hawk as its official spokesperson. 2 winners can choose between a Lamborghini Huracan Cerato, a Hennessy Velociraptor, a custom Ford Bronco, or $100,000 cash. I'm taking the Lambo, the world's first off-road supercar with a naturally aspirated V10. You can enter completely free or get additional entries by purchasing Ridge gear, like their wallets, their power banks, or their luggage. Ready to upgrade your wallet and maybe even your ride? For a limited time only, head to ridge.com and use the code DannyJones at checkout for 10% off your order and a chance to win Ridge's biggest sweepstakes ever. A Lamborghini Huracan Cerato, a Hennessy Velociraptor, a Ford Bronco, or $100,000 in cash. No purchase necessary to enter, but every dollar you spend gets you more entries. That's RIDGE.com and use the code DANNYJONES. After you purchase, please tell them that our show sent you.
We know that certain viruses can cause cancer, for example. So if it's kind of by a similar mechanism where it's like a certain, if shedding is actually happening, which I don't know if anybody's really looking into this deeply, like in a systematized way within the centralized scientific paradigm. Like if the spike protein shedding from jabbed individuals is actually influencing people who didn't take it. That would be a great question to ask. I don't know if
that's
they're
what
very
he was saying.
motivated. Yeah,
That is what he was saying,
it seems,
which is so scary.
maybe plausible, but
Well,
like
that is exactly what they are studying in bioweapons. I just had Anna Jacobson on the podcast, and she just wrote a book all about biological war.
okay.
And she was telling us about an experiment that was done with this woman who actually, I think she might have gone to Princeton. She was like a very high level Princeton graduate. I might be wrong about this. Might not have been Princeton. Might have been Harvard.
Okay.
Anyways, she was somehow recruited, or she got radicalized by one of the terrorist organizations over in Afghanistan or somewhere over there in the Middle East. And she was like a really smart biochemist. And she figured out a way to successfully make rabies aerosolized. Because rabies, from what I understand, is like you have to like actually touch it and get it on your like inside your like it has to get into your bloodstream.
I think it's from like a bite.
From a bite, right?
Yeah.
She was working on a way to make rabies aerosolized.
Okay.
To where you could just, take drones and spray it and people would all get rabies.
Great. Sounds like a good time.
Like that's what, and that's basically, her conclusion was after all the scientists they talked to, like they were trying to figure out how to find ways to make things like cancers, rabies, bubonic plague, make it to where it's just spread through the air, where there's no touch involved. You don't have to touch anything. You don't have to get something in your cut or whatever inside your bloodstream. So that's fucking terrifying.
How did they incentivize her to do this?
They're just radical ideological.
So she wants to kill a bunch of people?
Yeah, she wanted to destroy the United States.
God.
She wanted to do like a crazy terrorist attack on the United States.
That's crazy.
I forget what there was a specific there was one specific event that was like the tipping point for her, where she switched and she was caught. She was caught by, I believe, like the CIA or something in Afghanistan at like near the embassy, or maybe it was Pakistan.
Was it recent?
No.
Found her.
You found it?
Siddiqui.
There she is. Okay. Wow. Now after I just butchered the whole story, we'll tell the true story. She was a Pakistani neuroscientist.
MIT.
What school? MIT? Is that what it says? Okay, there you go. Born in Pakistan, came here, went to MIT, blah 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 blah. PhD in neuroscience, University in 2001. She returned to Pakistan.
9/11.
Following the 9/11 attacks, and again in 2003 during the war in Afghanistan. So it was the whole war in Afghanistan that might have done this. She might have had like family that was killed or something.
Okay.
And then she was added to the terrorism list and was the first woman to have been featured on that list. So scroll down. Oh, wait, what does that say? Go up. It says around the time she and her 3 children were allegedly kidnapped in Pakistan, 5 years later, she reappeared in Afghanistan and was arrested by Afghan police and held to question by the FBI while in custody. Where does it say about what she created?
Okay.
The virus that she was working on. Scroll down.
There we go.
Okay. She began collecting materials on viruses for biological warfare, according to intelligence officials in the Afghan Ministry of the Interior. Her son, Ahmed, who was with her when she was arrested, blah, 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 blah.
Next mention of virus.
Okay.
She was collecting materials on biological warfare.
Oh, God.
That would allow chickens to pass salmonella to humans more easily. So it wasn't even that was not at all what I was saying. But Annie was talking about people that were actively trying to make rabies transmissible through the air. But this is, it's all similar. It's all gain of function. You know what she also said? So biological warfare is illegal. Mm-hmm. Nuclear weapons are legal, so long as you sign the treaties.
Yeah.
Certain countries are allowed to have nukes. No country is allowed to have biological warfare programs. Like that's illegal globally. So she said, out of like all of the biological weapons facilities that are trying to work on these things, these chimera viruses around the world, 90% of them are disguised as vaccine labs.
That's interesting. Also, in the Patriot Act after 9/11, there was some aspect of that basically prohibited like I guess bioweapons research here, at least. I don't know about the global ban, but from what I understand, we ended up moving a lot of those labs to Ukraine.
Yeah, that was during Obama.
Yeah.
that happened. But there's still a lot of biological research facilities here in the U.S. that are described as.
They're usually not gain of function though. Almost ever.
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you look at viruses naturally, they either are extremely lethal and not transmissible, or they're highly transmissible and very, like, minor, basically.
Right.
It's very rare that it's both.
Yeah.
And so I think the gain of function is essentially tinkering to try to make it both. But I would imagine, even if that were successful, I mean, it could be wrong, but my guess would be that it would mutate very rapidly to restore the natural order of things. Because as a virus replicates, there's naturally going to be mutations that are occurring.
Right.
So even if it's like super lethal and transmissible in the first person, that could dramatically fall off to make it.
Really?
Absolutely. Because it's actually not advantageous for a virus, because they want to either be not killing their host and spreading to new hosts very easily, or if they kill their host, they don't want to do that super often, right? Because if they kill hosts and are also highly transmissible, they're going to kill all their hosts. Then they can't keep reproducing.
Right.
So in the natural order of things,
You need customers.
that balance happens. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to kill your customers.
Exactly. So I'd be willing to bet that it would mutate pretty quickly to kind of restore the natural order. But I mean, who knows?
Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, and another thing she wrote about in that book was like, so like they create these chimera viruses to where what they wanted, like what they were doing with this bubonic plague, they turned it into a pneumonic plague to where it was like a pneumonia plague. And it gave like, so you got the symptoms of the bubonic plague, but you got all these other pneumonic symptoms. So like if you're going to get it treated, your symptoms are so broad, they can't figure out what the problem is. And yeah, essentially like the point of her book, like she went through all like the war games that the United States has been through in case this does happen. And basically it leads to like full on people in the streets, like everything being burned down. The country's gone within 72 hours. It's just complete anarchy. And I think that's the fact that, you know, people are working on this stuff in labs all across the world is frightening. And the cartels have them, and, you know.
I mean, the fact that nothing is really happening much on that front is also a sign that it's either very challenging, they're not, you know, mobilizing it for a variety of reasons. There's, you know, different ways you could think about it. But something interesting about viruses, too, outside of the fact that some people don't think they exist, which I won't get into.
That's funny. Sam Tripoli doesn't believe. He thinks viruses are fake. He also thinks nukes are fake.
Yeah, I think that's kind of. I truly believe that we have a vast misunderstanding of what viruses are. I kind of personally see them as nature's way to bite back against us breaking nature's laws. For example, any sort of virulence is really an urban problem. So essentially, when you pack too many people, like the plague, for example, when you pack too many people into close quarters and somebody gets infected, and then they're infecting other people, the actual titers, like the amount of virus total, is super high. So the concentration is really high, which is increasing the likelihood of infection and potentially the severity of infection as well. Versus if we look at more rural cultures, they're not really impacted very much by these issues. Like, for example, when Jack went down to the Amazon, he was in Suriname and he was, you know, talking to some of the tribes people down there. And they had some like kind of herbal remedies that they were using to help with certain infections, but like none of them took the jabs, and like they were perfectly fine. They weren't affected also because they're living in an environment that's conducive to health and immune health in particular. But I think when we look at these urban environments, that's when, you know, we have this conversation of like, oh, are vaccines good or bad? Like, what context? Is there any context or like nuance there? If you want to live in an urban environment and live like a modern human lifestyle, I would say you should probably just follow the centralized model, because if you're going to break all the rules, you kind of have to take these things in order to offset your risk of living in this way that is not natural. It's not normal.
Right.
There's a lot of, you know, health risks that come with living in urban environments in regards to air pollution and infectious disease, and obviously, you know, lack of grounding, high EMF, you know, usually poor sun exposure, more indoor lifestyles. the constant like noise and like the kind of audio stress that comes with that. Like that's something that we don't really think about. But
some people love the sound of traffic and car horns.
Like dysregulated people. They like constantly want stimulus, like ADD people.
Yeah, like people like Gary Vee. He talks about that. You know who he is? He's like the entrepreneur guy.
Yeah, I don't know him well. But.
Like, I love it.
I mean, hey.
Sell. Buy, sell.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes along with his brand too. Mm-hmm. Makes sense that he would like that. But I think as human beings, we're wired for certain inputs. And it's easy if you're raised in a certain environment to, like we were talking about in the beginning of this conversation, to kind of become desensitized to a variety of inputs that would normally make anybody feel ill. But just because you're in these environments, it's literally breaking down like receptors, for example, that would cause you to have a negative response to something. Like, for example, we have a light receptor called melanopsin that's looking for blue light on our skin, on our eyes, and our brains, and our cardiovascular systems, and our fat tissue, et cetera. But when you're exposed to a lot of artificial blue light and non-native EMF, these receptors actually begin to break down. So you become less sensitive to the blue light because you're kind of being blasted with it all the time. So if you constantly live in that environment, you're not going to necessarily feel the effects of those frequencies on your body versus somebody who, let's say, works on a farm or something, or like spends a lot of their time outside, and then they go into an environment that's super enriched in artificial light. They are going to feel probably pretty bad. And the really cool thing that I noticed about kind of adopting a more nature-oriented lifestyle back in 2023, it literally took a few days for me to feel this difference, is when I started blocking blue light at night and getting sun during the day and spending my time outside, you know, working on my laptop outside, just being out there more. When I would try to sit down in front of a TV, for example, I would be like blinded by it. I'm like, I need to turn the brightness all the way down or like put on blue blockers or something, because I actually built back that sensitivity to the light frequencies. And I think that's just one example, but there's lots of different ways that our bodies are taking stock of the environment. And if we're constantly blasting those receptors of various sorts with that signal, it begins to break down and you kind of become numb to it. And you can't really see the impact of those inputs unless you reset your biology by kind of returning to natural inputs and then going back, and you'll be like...
Then you'll realize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you got to step out of it for a little bit to figure that. That happens to me. Any new thing I ever tried, like any new workout, any new diet, you name it, any supplement, like you start taking it for a while and you forget, like, I don't remember why I started taking this.
Exactly.
You know, like this shit, like this kratom stuff. Like I loved it when I started drinking it. I drank it for years, and then eventually it was like every day I needed one. I'm like, this is amazing. And on days I don't drink it, I'm like, I could really use one. And it's when you start to realize, like, okay, you got to take your fucking break. Stop drinking it for a month.
Yes.
Then maybe try another one, see how you feel, whatever. Like,
for some people, especially if you're, I mean, we could talk about a variety of different reasons that some people are more prone to like creating a habit around anything. But some people definitely have that like stickiness where it's like, that's the thing that gives me the dopamine that I'm looking for. And then you just keep going back to it because it's reliable in that way. And it can.
Or they replace it.
Sure.
You should replace it with something else.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be any better or worse, but
Yes.
it always gets replaced one way or another.
Well, that's what I think is like one of the hallmarks of modern humans is like at least one vice, but it's typically like 3 to 5 vices, I would say. And it's literally because this is also Alan Fry's work. He showed that non-native EMFs degrade the dopaminergic system. So you're constantly looking for the hit of dopamine that you otherwise would have gotten from nature. Like we talked about, I think, in our last podcast, when you're outside in UV light, it makes endorphins in your brain, which are opioids that stimulate the same receptors that kratom does and all the other opioid drugs that people like. Absolutely. Beta endorphin is one of the cleavage products of POMC, propiommelanocortin, which is produced in the brain and in the skin via UVB light exposure. So then it's going into the bloodstream. It can be cleaved into a bunch of things. One is beta endorphin, which is an endogenous opioid molecule that stimulates dopamine production and release in the brain that makes you feel really good. And it also improves critical thinking, modulates immune function positively, has lots of other functions as well that are super interesting. But we're really meant to be receiving that all day long if we were spending time outside, but nobody is. And everybody's completely deficient in UV and near-infrared light as well, just because of window glass and the modern LED lighting and fluorescent lighting.
So all day outside. You have to be out there all day.
I mean, at least take light breaks.
Right.
I personally like to spend all my days outside when I can, at least, weather permitting.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, even small breaks will make a huge difference.
I wonder if we stop spending so much time outside, spending more time inside, if the body would evolve to adapt to that, you know?
I mean, autism might be that.
I mean, go back in history, like were people in the Middle Ages, I mean, maybe, they were probably outside more because they worked outside more.
Yeah.
But like, it probably wasn't a huge difference. People probably were still inside a shitload. You know?
Yeah, they were. They still were. Also,
kings and queens sat in the castle all day long.
Well, I was going to say, like, one of the great kind of examples of this is looking at Egyptian royalty versus like the common man who would be working in the fields and outdoors. And if you look at like the skeletal remains of like mummies of royalty versus the common people, the commoners had like these beautiful defined jaws, like wide palate, like they died of kind of maybe blunt traumas or maybe infections, things like that. Famine, perhaps. Yeah. But the people indoors, the royalty, they had these narrow palates, like they had crowding in their teeth. They had issues like cardiovascular disease. These are hallmarks of living an indoor lifestyle.
They were also more inbred.
That's true too.
What was the guy? Remember who was showing us that deformity of the? It wasn't even a deformity. He was showing us the royalty. That was Gary Wayne was showing us that those royal folks, how their skeletons, their facial structure was crazy.
Was that in Northern Europe?
I don't remember.
Because I know there's a lot of inbreeding in Northern Europe royalty for sure.
No, this was specifically like I
think it was the Paris, maybe one of the Louis.
Oh yes. It was French royalty.
Sounds about right.
There was a specific medical term for this whatever you call it. Like for when this happened to people, there was a specific deformity. Yeah. And they were saying that for some reason it like shortened their lifespan and it made them look weird. But we were looking at it; they look like they have
Habsburg jaw.
Habsburg jaw.
Yes. There it is.
Yes.
They just got big ass jaws.
Like a Chad jaw.
Yeah, right? They're like looks maxing.
Look at that nose, though.
Yeah, the nose is wild.
Wow.
Didn't they have skeletons, like skeletal remains of this?
Oh, Steve? I see. The jaw is also like retrograde. It's like pushed in. It looks like an overbite.
Habsburg jaw.
Look at that. Like a big pointy jaw.
Wow.
I always
thought on the far left with that golden wig.
Wow.
I always thought this was like bad painting.
Well, you know what's crazy? Like you would think they would make them look attractive in the painting and like lie, but they didn't, I guess.
Could you imagine seeing a person that actually looked like that in real life?
Maybe did they wear it like a badge of honor? They're like, must be good looking if it's royalty. Gaslighting everybody in the country.
The more deformed you are, the more wealthy you are, the more power you
gaslight.
have. I mean, it kind of translates to today a little bit.
Yeah, I would say so.
That's crazy.
But yeah, a lot of times those like outward deformities are just signs of, for example, like connective tissue disorders. So it does affect like a lot of the deep organ systems as well. It's like, reflected at the high level, but it's also at the micro level. There's a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was his? Aunt Anjan of Daylight was telling me he thinks that we're all going to look like little gray aliens one day with the big eyes and the skinny bodies and white skin because of technology and the development, the way technology is going. And
so here's the problem. Fertility is like going to zero, essentially.
Yeah.
You can't have evolution and like an adaptive evolution without reproduction. So I just don't know if it's possible unless we literally figured out like the in vitro.
Yeah, we will. Of course we will.
Maybe.
We won't need sexual organs anymore.
Maybe. Or society might be destroyed before then.
We're already printing babies. We're already doing CRISPR, right?
I don't think it's allowed in humans, but apparently they tried in China.
It's not allowed, but I'm sure they're still doing it. I mean, Epstein was doing it.
Yeah, he was definitely talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know what all got done, but it's interesting. I just think I don't underestimate nature's ability to restore equilibrium. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
It could take us out anytime, really.
Yeah, I don't know if it's holy shit.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's fertility rates over how long? 1800s until 2020. What is that big spike? 1960. Is that the summer of love?
I was going to say like post-war.
Wow, it went all the way up to 3.5 in 1960.
That's crazy.
That is bonkers. Yeah, that was like the psychedelic age. That's when everyone was, you know, anti-war, LSD, all that stuff.
It's true.
The counterculture.
Yeah,
and now
that's crazy.
Now psychedelics are like getting bought up by the pharmaceutical companies and like this turned into this billion-dollar industry.
Well, they want to like change the molecular structure slightly so that you don't experience the psychedelic effects, but you get the other benefits like neurogenesis and like cognitive benefits.
Well, not only that, I mean, DARPA's doing that with the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. They're trying to figure out how to do that for soldiers so they can get them off the battlefild, get them right back on the battlefield.
Of course.
You know, like get rid of their trauma, get back out there. But they're also doing this stuff with, I guess, Trump fast-tracked the approval for like Ibogaine for treatment and all that. And there was like all these companies that were already positioned, like ready to make the financial moves before that was fast-tracked to like set their patents and like make so much money and like buy these companies. There was, I don't understand the financial world, but basically there was, you know, everything was already in place before he like made that public announcement. So like Eli Lilly, I think, was the one that purchased a company. And I sent you a link to this, Steve. And there was like, I think it was in the trillions of dollars that is going to be made off this. They're just going to turn this into this crazy product.
So it's like a synthetic or like slightly modified version of the actives in Ibogaine?
Yeah, they want to push Ibogaine through, and these companies are basically trying to lock down the patents for it, if I understand correctly.
Right.
President Trump recently praised Eli Lilly at the public event and called it a great company and highlighted its planned $3.5 billion investment for manufacturing plant in Pennsylvania.
Oh, great.
Right. But yeah, no, it's crazy how pharmaceutical companies are, you know, just positioned to make a killing off of psychedelics.
Well, I wonder, there could be a bit of backlash, I guess, if the molecules still maintain some of their psychedelic properties. I feel like, actually, Chanel, my friend, and I were just having this conversation about how when you take a psychedelic, it really opens up your mind to like what's possible and how little we understand. And I feel like that's kind of the humbling experience that a lot of modern humans need to kind of just restore some baseline humility in like how little we actually understand and how little we actually control. That would actually be a good thing. So if I think psychedelics made their rounds for that. Yeah. Obviously, in some people, you would get psychosis and other issues. But for the vast majority, I think it would just be like very eye-opening.
Yeah.
We should give that to world leaders so they don't make stupid decisions.
I don't
politicians.
think so. I don't think it would make all the psychedelic people, experts that I've talked to, they say psychedelics make you more of what you already are. They bring out sort of the inner psyche even more, like your deepest beliefs, like the deepest parts of you.
Okay.
There was this crazy study that was done at Johns Hopkins, this study on psychedelic leaders where they gave them all psilocybin, leaders of different religions. And they documented their experience to see if they're.
I remember this.
The hypothesis was to see if there was like a common core to all religions.
Yeah.
And so they gave all these different different religious leaders psilocybin, and they documented what happened, and they all had amplified experience based on their religious beliefs. No connection between any of them. So, there's a lot of people that believe it's just like a placebo that amplifies what's already there.
Well, so I could make the argument that in all power-hungry world leaders, let's say, the underlying current is like fear. Because anybody who wants to control something or control people, it's like ultimately a fear thing. Like they're afraid of losing control, they're afraid of death or something like this. So they could have actually a very negative, powerful, like bad trip perhaps if they took like a high dose psilocybin or LSD or something. Yeah. Which could scare them straight, honestly. I don't know. It could go either way.
You're right about the fear of death thing. There's a guy who actually wrote a book about this called The Worm at the Core. Sheldon Solomon, I believe his name is.
Yep.
Yeah, and they did a study on people to figure out what motivates humans the most, and it's fear of death.
Yep. I was just talking about this with my partner, which is that if we look at like the whole transhumanist movement, it's literally just it's all fear-based, right?
The richest people, I mean, except for, Warren Buffett maybe, are just terrified of death.
Totally.
And if you read those Epstein files and you read like Peter Thiel's emails when he was sending the list to the assistant of like what he needed for lunch that day or whatever,
Yeah.
the list is insane of like what he will and will not eat.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense because they can't take any of their worldly treasures with them when they die.
Right.
So they just want to stick around as long as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Such a Christian thing
Kind of.
to not want to die.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way.
Live forever. By the way, we're opening up a church and we're going to teach you all about the Antichrist.
We're in the church.
Yes, we are. Well, we're in the synagogue of Satan right now.
Yeah, I think, I mean, all religions offer some sort of perspective on what happens to you when you die. It's kind of like a hallmark of a religion in general. Mm-hmm. And they all have the common thread of like, you don't just poof disappear. There's some aspect of you that lives on.
Yeah.
So I think humans need that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't have that, they cling to things that don't deserve to be worshipped in that way, like politics.
Totally.
Anything like that you see Dogma in.
Yeah.
It's like misplacing those neural circuits onto something that
I don't
doesn't
think we
deserve
need it.
them.
I think we find it. Like, I think it's just a
Yeah.
natural thing that the human mind is drawn to.
For sure.
It's like it helps us. It definitely relieves stress, you know, because it's like obviously like worrying about what's going to happen after you die is like super stressful, and like you know, worrying about like, is everything happen for a reason? Is there free will? Am I really creating my own destiny, or is this all God's plan? Right? There's a huge element to that, and it's like, you know, I think that the human mind is designed to like embrace religion or God or something like that. But like the psychedelic thing, that's my problem with the whole psychedelic thing. Is people start to make that shit a religion.
Right.
They start to make it, this is the fucking answer to everything,
True,
right? This
that's
is going to
true.
fix the church.
Yeah.
There's people that want to do that. There's people that want to introduce psychedelics into the Catholic Church to revive Christianity. And they think that that's going to be the answer. That's going to bring back the ancient mysteries, right? So you're going to
Right.
my problem with that is you're giving this one guy who is the direct line to God, who is in control of his congregation of people that attend his church, you're going to allow him to dope up all his people with psychedelics who've never done psychedelics before. And now he's suddenly like, that's the recipe for disaster.
It could be a cult real quick.
Oh yeah, for sure. You got Heaven's Gate.
Yeah. Yeah, it could go bad for sure. Also with like the power dynamics in general,
Yeah.
like set and setting is the most important things when it comes to psychedelics, right?
And then you also have these people who
experience.
get this like messiah complex. They get this messianic complex where they talk to you like you're their child.
Yes.
And look, I have all the answers.
I know, I hate that.
You haven't done 5-MeO 100,000 times like me, Alexis. I've seen it. I know it. You have to do it this way.
Yeah, there was actually this character online. I don't remember his name, Leo something. And I remember he did this thing where he basically took 5-MeO every day for like 30 days. And when he came back afterwards, he was like wearing white and like acting like he was God. And I'm like, oh no, this is so cringe.
It's crazy. People are fucking wacky. There's people that just weren't meant to do that stuff.
Totally. And I mean, we're meant to be having an embodied experience. It can be cool to have these really like heady type of, you know, experiences in life as well. But I think it can be very destabilizing and ungrounding. And if you're doing it in the wrong context and like without the right environment to cultivate health, for example, a lot of times these things will like point out what's wrong in your life or in your body for you to focus on, which could be a positive motivator, but it could also, you know, lead to a spiral or whatever else, depending on how motivated somebody is to actually change.
Right. As long as you have some sort of like, you know, plan for it and you're not just haphazardly doing it to kill time or just because you're bored or
it should be like
whatever.
a ritual, like something that's sacred. It should be treated like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I just worry about like what's going to happen when it becomes like super commercialized by pharmaceutical companies and they start prescribing it to people. And, you know, I don't know how it's going to work with insurance companies, but I'm sure it's not going to be cheap. They're probably going to charge thousands of dollars for this Ibogaine treatment. And Ibogaine, why Ibogaine too? Because Ibogaine is one of the psychedelics that actually people die from cardiac shit. Like they have heart problems when they take Ibogaine. No one's ever died from DMT to my knowledge.
Well, I think the remission rates for addiction in particular and PTSD are like exceptional with Ibogaine. And apparently it's because it's such a negative, it basically makes you confront everything that like you're avoiding in your life and all of the kind of dark corners of your mind. Right. And you're confronted with that and it's like, oh shit, I gotta, you know, shape up or I'm gonna die basically, or this is gonna happen, I'm gonna live with regret or whatever else, burn in hell or whatever it is. And that was like a very strong motivating force to change afterwards.
Your annual checkup usually means weeks and weeks of waiting for just 10 rushed minutes with a doctor. followed by somebody telling you everything looks normal and here's a statin. But normal doesn't answer questions about your sleep, your energy, your hormones, your recovery, or what sort of problems could rear their ugly head years down the road. And that's why Superpower makes sense to me. One simple set of lab tests measures more than 100 biomarkers across areas like your heart, thyroid, hormone, metabolism, vitamins, gut microbiome, and environmental toxins. Your results are organized inside the Superpower app, along with a personalized health plan and access to an on-demand healthcare team. It's proactive health based on your actual data instead of just waiting every year until something finally goes wrong. Go beyond your annual checkup and finally understand what's really happening inside your body. For a limited time, our listeners get $20 off to unlock their health membership. Head to superpower.com and use the code Danny for $20 off your $199 Superpower membership. And after you sign up, they'll ask how you heard about Superpower. Let them know that Danny Jones Podcast sent you.
So I've taken DMT. I've never blasted off on it though. I would do it. I'm really curious about the research that's being done with like the laser. Have you heard about it?
I've done it
Did you see the code?
many times.
You saw the code?
What did you see, Daddy?
Tell me.
The last time I did it, completely blasted off, shine the laser, and the first time I looked at it, I saw like, it took me a while, but I could see like Sanskrit type text. That wasn't like the code that he explained. Okay. It looked more like Sanskrit, like Lord of the Rings type stuff that's on the ring. And then I came down from it, did it again about 15 minutes later, and I saw billions of dicks. I shit you not.
Was the DMT wrong making fun of you?
Billions and billions of dicks in red laser form, like flying through.
That sounds like the Jokers that were like playing with you.
That's what I thought too.
That's hilarious. I actually had a really cool experience with my partner where we took MDMA and then we smoked cannabis, and I don't know if you've ever combined them, but it's very psychedelic when you combine them. Like it's the most euphoric combination in the world. And we both had this same close-eyed visuals at the same time, which looked like Aramaic, Hebrew, or something, like just scrolling across our visual field.
Yeah.
We were both having this experience at the same time, and I was curious because it sounded just like the characters that, is his name Danny Goler?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he described with like the laser beam. So I'm like, oh shit, did we see like the same code? It's pretty cool.
A lot of people allegedly see that code. It's very, very strange. But yeah, I don't know what it is.
Wait, do you know?
I don't know if I believe it's the Matrix.
Can you look up From Atom to Cosmos? I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He was a researcher, like a physicist. He and his wife were researchers like a couple decades ago, I want to say. And he, let's see if we can find it.
From Atom to Cosmos?
Oh, Atom, ATOM, sorry.
Oh.
My bad.
ATOM.
OM. It's like Bentoff, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Bentoff. Yeah, so he actually
I've read his book.
Basically described like the Hebrew characters as being kind of like these kind of like
he did.
archetypal
He was Mossad.
shapes. He was Mossad?
Yes.
Shut up.
I swear to God. Yes, he was Mossad.
Wow, okay. I mean, maybe a bit biased then.
Maybe a touch.
That's hilarious.
But he was very smart.
But he got killed.
One
They
of the smart,
suicided
in
him.
a plane crash.
Plane crash,
Yeah.
yeah. And his wife ended up taking over. And
Very, very smart guy. His book's incredible. I think he was definitely on to something with his research.
I think so too. But anyway, it made me think of the same thing with the lasers and like what we saw because it kind of looked like Hebrew. It genuinely did.
So what specifically was he saying about the lasers?
Oh, well, like Danny was saying that
It was the same thing?
it was the same characters. Like it looks like Hebrew / Aramaic.
Really?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Can you find a clip? Is this on video? Or is this written down in text?
No, it was on his podcast with, who was it? It was a recent podcast.
Oh, on
that he
Danny's
did.
podcast?
No, Danny was on a podcast.
And he was talking about Itzhak Bentov.
He was just talking about the characters that people were seeing with the laser beam
But
during DMT.
I'm saying, how did you make the connection to Itzhak, though?
Oh, with the characters. It looks like Hebrew. Like
okay.
genuinely looks like Hebrew. So I thought
okay.
maybe that he's onto something actually.
so-
Maybe he's not actually biased. Maybe it's legit.
Right, but Itzhak talked about this specifically in a book or something?
He talks about it in that video.
In that video?
Yeah, From Atom to Cosmos. It's a great video, by the way, too.
Oh, okay.
People
Find the
can
clip
check
in
it out.
that video.
Yeah.
I would be curious to seeing that.
Yeah, if you can find it. I think it's pretty long. It's like an hour, but if it's easy to find, then
Yeah.
It's pretty
He's fascinating. His whole thing is about his book's called Stalking the Wild Pendulum.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
complicated book. Like I had to listen to it on, most people listen to books on like 2x speed. I listened to that on 0.5 speed.
Yes, I can relate.
But like, yeah, he talks about how everything's like a vibration. Like everything's on different vibrations, and like everything's a pendulum. And like when the pendulum is swinging, it's like in a state you can measure. But when the pendulum goes up before it falls, something.
It's like dividing by zero, basically.
Yeah.
You can't do it. When it's at the center and at each end, I think it basically is like this undefined function.
Right.
Yeah. Because
Right.
the math
and he talks
doesn't
a lot
math.
about light and stuff like that too. It's very, very complicated and interesting.
Well, it's pretty cool that, like, I don't know if you've been up on Dr. Kruse's work lately, but
I read one of his, in preparing for this, I did read one of his Patreon posts, but I haven't been listening to anything.
Because in his conversations lately, it's like everything is coming back to frequency, vibration, like resonance, like at a physical level, like an anatomical level even. He's been talking about these vortices in the body that form in the brain and the heart, and that essentially this is a way for the body to separate deuterium from protium, deuterium being like the heavy form of hydrogen that essentially gunks up the mitochondrial engines. So it needs to be kept away from the cells and the mitochondria, ideally in a healthy body. And that there's a vortex essentially at the heart. The heart serves as like not simply just a pump, and maybe not even a pump at all. You could actually make the argument that the blood vessels are like actually creating, they're smooth muscle, right? So they could be pushing things along. You could actually make the argument that the heart's actually slowing blood down, like it's collecting it and slowing it down, the flow of blood.
Interesting.
There's also some electrostatic interactions. So the surface charge of the blood cells, the red blood cells, is repelled from the glycocalyx, which is like a kind of like a mucous membrane / a charged water that lines all the blood vessels, so that electrostatic charge keeps things moving and like repelling. But the vortex within the heart, essentially the blood gets spinned. And in the brain as well, he talks about essentially like very fine structures within the skeletal structure of the skull, Meckel's cave being one, for example, that essentially helps to create this vortex that then can separate the heavy deuterium from the protium. And that's actually how, if you look at like nuclear programs, they need heavy water. They need D2O, deuterium oxide, in order to run their nuclear reactions. And so how do they do that? They use giant centrifuges. Spin the water and you can actually separate those.
Of deuterium water.
Yeah, you can take regular water and use a centrifuge to basically partition out the heavy water from the light water.
Right.
So essentially Jack's argument, hopefully I'm not misrepresenting it, he might kill me if I am, but I'm pretty sure I got this, is that the vortex essentially can help to do a very similar thing. And that helps the protium to reach into the cells, where the protium containing water, I should say, to get into the cells and actually support mitochondrial function, because they need the light hydrogen in order to have the mitochondria run the electron transport chain, versus the deuterium, if it gets in there, it doesn't allow that process to happen. So it essentially slows and gunks up the engines. So I don't remember why I started talking about that, but it's very interesting.
And
the vibration and like the resonance. So basically Jack is saying that if you're like standing on a vibration plate, or you're moving or walking or like chanting or singing or stimulating your vagus nerve, like with the little, there's like a little electrodes you can put in your ears or on your neck that stimulate the vagus nerve, gargling as well, like initiating the gag reflex, all of these things help. Yeah. Anyway, take that up with Jack. He said also the pool jets. So like you can stand by the pool jets and like make it hit your back. So like all these different things.
Okay, I don't want to know what the fuck Jack's getting into down there in El Salvador with the gag reflex and the pool jets.
He's so dead.
Got something to tell us, buddy?
Yeah, but basically these are all ways to vibrate your system and get that vortex going and helping this process along. And they're things that naturally people would do anyway, if they're like moving their bodies. If they're in nature, obviously, like sunlight helps to generate that charge separated water that helps with flow and flux, and UVA light stimulates nitric oxide production, which helps with flow and flux as well. So it's kind of like the synergistic effect that you would naturally get if you were living a more a lifestyle more conducive to health. But if you're an indoor person sitting inside all day under artificial light, not really moving, eating garbage food that's laden with deuterium and seed oils that are also high in deuterium, then it's creating this perfect storm essentially to break that system.
We're talking about Bentov.
Yeah. And like vibration resonance and stuff like that.
what he specifically talks about, like, have you seen his bell curve thing that he did? He talks about this like bell curve of human intellect, I think it was, or human consciousness maybe. And he says that like at the front of the bell curve on the bottom before it starts going up, it's like you have people with lower vibration, like lower consciousness. And then like the bell starts to go up to like a peak, and then you have like the majority of society that's like in this like mid-range of vibration, frequency, consciousness or whatever. And when you get to like the far bell curve, he's like, you have people with like very, very extremely high consciousness, high vibration, lots of energy. And he asked the interviewer, he's like, so the people on this very far into the bell curve, where do you think they are, like in society? He goes, oh, they must be in the universities. They must be, you know, in the scientific labs and all this stuff. And he goes, no. He goes, they're in the mental hospitals.
Yes, I remember actually hearing him talk about how like schizophrenics, for example, like they're actually operating at this higher level, but it's just not conducive to society.
Exactly. Where they're just connecting so many dots all the time, and they're hyper rational, always processing things on like a rapid pace, and people just think they're crazy. And I always found that very interesting with him.
That is very
interesting.
interesting.
And, you know, that guy was just really onto something. And, you know, he was also one of the people that was like pioneering this whole idea that there's more to physics than like hard dead matter, than electrons, neutrons, and protons. He's like, there's more to it than like reductionist science. There's something else out there that we don't really understand. That's not like there's something about like the human experience and human consciousness that's not weighable. It's not measurable. You can't break it down into atoms.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, when you think about all of the tools that we use in science, they're all just extensions of our five senses. So that means you're only detecting things and, you know, perceiving things that would be perceivable by the five senses if they had that extension of ability. But if it's outside of that, then we're still not detecting it. So it's really like kind of the unknown unknowns quadrant of, you know, that classic thing.
Yeah.
That we don't even know how to develop technology that could help us answer that question because it's outside the scope of our even experience of reality. So I think we talked about like humility earlier and like the role of psychedelics and maybe making you realize how little you understand. And actually, if we think about frequency as it relates to how our minds function and our brains function, and let's say that we consider the brain as like an antenna, and if you take a certain psychedelic that maybe widens the window of perception, like for example, in the same way you tune a radio station to a certain station, you could tune it to a different one and get a different signal. I think it's kind of a similar thing with psychedelics or any substances really that are like changing the way that you're perceiving reality, is that you're like basically changing the window of perception, either like either shifting it or widening it. And it's allowing you to perceive things that are actually real, but they're just not in the slice of reality that you're typically accustomed to.
Yeah,
I think it's helpful.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, at the very least, it can just get you off the like normal everyday vibration that you're on, like the typical way you look at life, you know, through a certain lens. It just puts everything in a different perspective, a different lens. Makes you sometimes, depending on who you are, it can make you realize what's more important or what's a waste of time. It's a tool. It's a tool at some level, and at you know, extreme levels, it can be like a complete, you know, reality shift for some people.
Yeah. I mean, I genuinely think that we don't necessarily need psychedelics, but my experience going to El Salvador, for example, like the entire time I was there, I kind of felt like I was on Molly or something. Like I literally just felt amazing. And I'm like, oh crap, like I'm literally supposed to feel like this all the time. And then I don't feel like reaching for substance A, B, or C because I'm already feeling amazing.
Yeah, it's just because you were out of New Jersey.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's something specific about El Salvador. There's also something specific about being out of the States and like somewhere more equatorial, for example. And more supportive to, you know, health.
Yeah.
That just makes you realize that humans were kind of meant to feel good.
One of the craziest things you told me that never left me last time was how people that live in the equatorial latitudes have dark eyes and dark skin because they get so much sun. They don't need to have white pasty skin to absorb all that light. And the people at the northern latitudes, they have lighter colored eyes, they have whiter skin because they need to absorb more sunlight to be healthy. that just blew my mind and makes so much sense.
Yeah. Well, there's even like another level to that story, which is that a lot of people in the mainstream, they consider melanin to be something that is protecting from UV light. I would totally flip the script on that, and I would say melanin's not protecting against UV light, it's harnessing it. And if we look at the work of Dr. Arturo Solis Herrera, for example, he's showing that essentially when melanin absorbs high energy photons, i.e. UV light from the sun, that it actually can stimulate some form of a human photosynthetic process, like similar to when plants in the chloroplast absorb sunlight. Mm-hmm. The chlorophyll can basically facilitate water splitting and ultimately make free electrons to power energy production and starch production in plants. Mm-hmm. But that in humans, you can't necessarily supply all of your energy from the sun, but for people who are very deeply melanated, super dark skin, and they're in the correct environment, like near the equator, and also maybe at high altitude as well. If we look at the parts of the world where we see that, it's like in Kenya, it's both high altitude and equatorial latitude, so its UV is like off the charts. that melanin is actually soaking in those UV photons and using it productively to help power their bodies. It's not just protection. I feel like the whole protection perspective is more of like a Northern European propaganda type of situation, because melanin in general is just demonized, and it always has been. And even in Latin culture today, like you'll see, I literally have a friend whose grandma was like, oh, stop tanning, like you're gonna look poor. Because they associate darker skin with lower class. Yeah. And it's like all of this colonialist programming that came with them being...
Stop breeding outside the gene pool. You're going to look poor.
Basically. Because they're used to these basically Northern Europeans coming down, with the imperialist pursuits and then kind of imposing their culture upon them. And that's stuck. And that programming kind of runs really deep. But melanin is very, very powerful, and it's doing things we can barely grasp, honestly.
How the hell did like mainstream medicine fuck it up so bad? Like how is it possible that it's backwards when you go to your doctor? Mm-hmm. They tell you the opposite.
Mm-hmm. I would say that it's not even fucked up, it's intentional. Like it's intentionally misleading. Yeah. And I mean, Jack talks about this all the time with the Flexner report back in the day with like the Flexner report.
Flexner. Okay.
Yeah, Flexner. So Abraham Flexner wrote the report. He was funded by Andrew Carnegie, if I remember correctly. And essentially, he was tasked with helping to centralize the medical education system. So essentially, before that, there wasn't really standardization across medical education for doctors. It was kind of, different depending on what school you went to. And there was also a lot of folk remedies, holistic medicine, like more traditional therapies that were used for basically all of human history. And so he went in and essentially said, like, none of this is evidence-based. We need to kind of reconfigure medical education. Of course, at the same time, we were in the process of creating the modern pharmaceutical model as essentially a way to sell the byproducts of oil processing and manufacturing. So when you process crude oil, it creates all these byproducts that were waste. So they're like, gosh, how can I make money off of this waste? Well, it turns out you can make certain drugs, for example, aspirin. Although a similar molecule can be found naturally in white willow bark, aspirin was initially synthesized from this waste from oil production. And essentially the point being that the roots of big pharma, going all the way back to this time period of the early 1900s, around 1920-ish, is rooted in essentially the kind of marketing and repurposing of byproducts that, essentially they wanted to make money off of in some way. So they were like, how can we use this? Let's get to work. This is also rooted in German culture as well, because Germany has always been big on chemistry and physics. If we talk about the journal model, which I would really like to as it relates to Robert Maxwell and everything like that. If you go back to the journals before he started the industrial journal complex, a lot of science was published in German because they were basically at the peak of their chemistry, physics, etc. And that's because if we look at science, it's actually almost always rooted, innovation in science is almost always rooted in war and motivations in wartime eras, essentially. And so anyway, a lot of these journals were published in Germany, and in Germany, they have a huge chemical manufacturing kind of culture, let's say. I actually worked at BASF for a period of time, which is a big German chemical company. And so essentially, between that German knowledge of chemistry and taking these oil byproducts, they were able to synthesize all these really, I guess, interesting molecules that could be repurposed in the context of human health. So it was like kind of a win-win for them.
So they're figuring out a way to monetize shit. And they're saying, like, we're already making money here. We can scale our operation, make more money if we also monetize this byproduct of what we're already creating.
Exactly.
Now, how does that work its way into medical school?
Yes. So let me circle back to that. So this was part of Flexner's report of standardizing medical education. One of the main things that he did in his report was suggest that all folk remedies, holistic remedies, nature-based things were removed from medical education, and that the doctors were primarily being taught this new kind of pharmaceutical lens of like using these synthetic drugs to treat people. And prior to this period of time, you often saw sunning decks on the roofs of hospitals, and you can find old pictures of that as well, where patients would get wheeled up to like bask in the sun to help facilitate their healing process.
Really?
Absolutely. It was like commonplace.
Wow. What time period was this?
So it would be like pre-1920 you would see these. After the Flexner report, all of that was completely eliminated, within hospitals, and the primary route of treatment became these like synthetic pharmaceutical drugs. And of course, from a capitalist perspective, it's a great incentive to continue with that model, right? And so I think we kind of we're seeing right now essentially the end point of how that plays out.
Yeah.
Like people sicker than ever, on paying more money for drugs every month than they do for food and other, life-sustaining things.
Yeah.
And like, just worse health in the history of our species. That's kind of the end game of this model.
How much of, like, for people that go all the way in like their PhD and postdocs and science and stuff like this, and chemistry or whatever it might be, how much of the money that is like granted to like the labs and the studies and that comes from pharmaceutical companies? Do you know?
I couldn't tell you the percent, but I can say in my lab, we had multiple collaborations with Pfizer and other pharmaceutical companies that were funding specific projects within the lab that are kind of like there's an incentive for both parties to do this research, whether it's like maybe characterizing a new drug molecule and looking at its in vivo effects in animals, for example. There's a lot of cancer research that's being funded by pharmaceutical companies in particular, with like small molecule drugs and antibodies and like immunotherapies, things like that.
Yeah.
Most of the funding in like your standard PhD and like research environment is going to be coming from the government. And this actually ties in the entire story about like Robert Maxwell and the journal industrial complex. So maybe I would like to circle back to that first and build up to that if
Like
it
with
makes sense.
Pergamon Press and all that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, explain that.
Okay, so essentially, Robert Maxwell bought a publishing company, something Springer, I don't remember the name, and rebranded it as Pergamon Press in 1951. So Pergamon, which is interesting, it's like
Throne of Satan.
Yeah, Throne of Satan, which odd choice for the journal company's name, but whatever. A little sus. So essentially, if you think about the context of this, we're like post-World War II, post-Manhattan Project. Like there is a lot of interest in science as an industry because we saw essentially the potential like catastrophic, but also success that could come from a siloed pursuit towards some sort of centralized research project. For example, in the Manhattan Project in particular, we had hundreds of scientists working on a common goal, but none of them were actually fully clued in on the actual like overall project, the big picture. Exactly. So basically what you can see from that and learn from that is that you can set, a bunch of minds on kind of niche projects, and then you can take that information and use it to make something catastrophic where none of them are really complicit in that. They're all just kind of doing their own little thing.
Keep them all in their little mazes and their 2D boxes, and then you have a high-level view of everything, which happens today and everything.
Yes. And it's kind of hijacking certain individuals' natural, like, scientific inclination because, scientists were just really interested in like problem solving and like getting to the bottom of things. And so you can kind of hijack that and generate data that can be used for very negative applications, let's say. And that's exactly, if we see that followed out, we can see today, like, science is super siloed. There are some interdisciplinary studies, but mostly, like, you know, you're kind of just working on your little chunk of reality and trying to understand it. And nobody's putting the pieces back together to paint a holistic, full picture of, like, at a high level, what's going on here. And if we were to do that, we would probably see, like, oh, like, we don't need all this fancy stuff. We can literally just reconnect with what the earth naturally gave us, and we're going to be well. Also, this ties in with the whole pharmaceutical thing, because most of science today is translational in that it's feeding into a human health application in some way, because that's where all the money is, because everybody's sicker than ever, right? So it's like, we need all this research to understand why people are sick. And it's like so blatantly obvious, but again, nobody's looking at the big picture. They're all just focused on, like, the cancer, the diabetes, the neurodegeneration. They're like hyper-focused and like zoomed in, and they need to zoom out so you can see how everything works together, and then it becomes obvious. But circling back to the journal model, essentially what Maxwell did was he realized that at this time period, after science has kind of become more siloed and, like, grant funding became more relevant from the government to fund all these different kinds of science projects at different universities, that he could essentially create this specialized journal model where it's like, oh, if you're doing work in, I don't know, vaccines, or you're doing work in immunology, that you can publish in this little niche journal. You can publish your results. This is also around the time where, like, the systematized peer review process became a thing. So prior to this, basically editors would be looking at the submissions and just kind of deciding themselves whether or not something deserved to be published. The systematized peer review process that kind of came as a result of this specialized journal model that Maxwell created is a whole nother can of worms that's an issue in science, because essentially the peer reviewers, their motivations aren't purely just, is this good science at all. It like creates a lot of issues, because sometimes your peer reviewer, let's say, may be working on in a lab that's working on competing projects. And, like, I've literally heard of examples where a peer reviewer sits on a paper so they can publish theirs first, so they get the clout from that. And this is exactly what Maxwell created, was this publish or perish paradigm, where it's like, labs and researchers are incentivized to publish as much as possible to get their name out there and to, like, build some, you know, basically clout chasing virtually. So that they can get more money, they can get more grants, and it creates this, like, capitalist cycle within science, which was never meant to be touched by capitalism, really. Like, science in its ultimate form is simply just to kind of curiously pursue the nature of reality. It shouldn't be for financial gain, because that actually tarnishes the process. Because if you create that kind of perverse incentive, it's going to incentivize you to get certain types of results as well. And of course, if you're going in with a bias, you can kind of see whatever you think you're going to see. And scientists are only human, right? So they're going to carry that bias with them into experiments and into, you know, the analysis of their data, and et cetera. So it creates this very vicious feed-forward cycle that's essentially broken science. You know, now we're at the point where I don't remember the name of the researcher, but I believe he's at the University of Washington, and he essentially published a paper saying something like 80% of papers published in the biological sciences are not reproducible in other labs. So essentially, other labs have trouble getting the same results. Wow. And that could be because of technical reasons. It could be because, you know, technical issues in the initial experiments. It's kind of fraught with a whole bunch of different issues. But it just goes to show you that peer review is not really solving that problem of, like, oh, are the results true? Because we have a rigorous peer review system now, and we see these issues present as much as ever, if not more. Versus peer review is also very much slowing down the process of scientific publishing, which means that if somebody has really breaking research, it's really hard to get it to reach the public in a timely manner. That's why people like Kevin McKernan, they're publishing their results on Substack.
Just open source on
Open source immediately, so people can reference it right away and then can do their own experiments to, like, you know, confirm, deny, or build upon that research. Like, that's how science is meant to be pursued. We're supposed to be talking to each other. We're supposed to be sharing results. And it shouldn't be this, like, very rigid and kind of cutthroat environment.
I have personal experience with that whole peer review process. There was a gentleman who I had on my podcast who is a classicist, and he studied ancient Greek. All he did was read and translate ancient Greek.
Is it Ammon Hillman?
Yes.
I love him.
So he did a dissertation on this guy, Galen, who was the Surgeon General of the Roman Empire. and he was Marcus Aurelius's personal physician. This guy was not just a physician, but he was also like a philosopher. Like he was, he was a jack of all trades. He was a genius in every aspect. But so he studied all the different testing and medications and concoctions that Galen was making and giving to Marcus Aurelius, including like opium. Like there was this one drink that he created called the Theriac, which was like, I forget how many different ingredients were in it, but it essentially included opium and like 7 different viper venoms, like North African viper venoms. And the reason that he and Marcus Aurelius were both taking it was because I guess the common way that royalty or like emperors would get killed was being poisoned, like assassinated with poisons. So he wanted to drink these viper venoms as like a performance enhancing drug to like it boost his immunity to venom, right? Anyways, long story short, this dude wrote this dissertation on it, and he got in a huge fight with the people at his university who were reviewing him to get his PhD. They made him take out all references to recreational drugs in the Roman Empire. Ugh. And so he did it, and he got his PhD. Then he went and took everything and published a book. And the book was called The Chemical Muse. And then, whatever your opinion is on Ammon Hillman, that's neither here nor there. The point is, the book went out, and it was peer-reviewed in the Bryn Mawr Classical Review by a guy who was a forensic pathologist. I read the peer review, and I thought it was pretty disingenuous. I thought he was, straw manning everything he possibly could about the book. It didn't make sense. So I invited the guy on the podcast because this guy was also very interesting. He did like autopsies on the remains of Picasso. He studied Hitler's remains, his alleged remains that were in Moscow. He studied the remains of Napoleon, all kinds of like huge figures of history. And he reviewed his book about drugs being used in the Roman Empire, shit on it in the peer review. Like this is a high level. This is like the most prestigious classical review there is. Okay. And I brought him in and I was asking him questions about his review on it. And he was sort of like, listen, like this isn't my expertise.
Then why is he reviewing
That
it?
was the whole thing. Like that blew my mind.
Oh no.
So the fact that people can do a peer review who are high-level academics in one lane, but not necessarily the exact lane that the person is who created that piece of work or that study or whatever it is, that just blew my mind, how that's allowed.
So I don't know about in classicism, but what I will say for like biology and chemistry, typically when you're submitting a paper, you have to submit a list of a few names of people you would want to review your paper. Doesn't mean they'll necessarily be selected, but they usually are.
And this wasn't like a paper. This was a book that he published. So I don't know what the difference is. As far as, but it was peer review. I mean, the Bryn Mawr is like a huge peer review.
Okay. So. Yeah, there's probably some variability across the fields, so I can't really speak to that specific field. But, I mean, at least in the sciences, you are able to give names of people that you would want to look at your science who you think would actually be good fits. But even still, like, obviously there's going to be bias in that context as well. There could be some level of competition. Right. If you're, reviewing somebody's paper that's in your exact field in your space, maybe working on a similar project that you are, as I mentioned before. But mostly the issue is that it literally just slows everything down so much. And it's slowing down our ability to respond in a timely manner to new cutting edge science that could be life-changing or world-changing. Yeah. And we saw that during COVID very strongly. Actually, Chanel, my friend that I brought, she did some work on like screening different small molecules that could be helpful in COVID. And obviously ivermectin popped up and like ivermectin-like molecules. And like we had data to suggest that there could be antiviral effects of that. And like it was just completely ignored, like not wanting to be brought to the, attention, public attention for whatever reasons.
So what was the deal with ivermectin? So I don't know if you saw the debate Professor Dave did with the guy Pierre Corey and somebody else.
I didn't watch
You know who Pierre Corey is?
Yeah, I kind of vaguely know who he is, yeah.
So he did a debate with Pierre Corey and this other guy all about ivermectin. And the case that he was making, I don't remember all of it. It was too high level for me to really digest and retain. But the argument that he was making was that like there are no studies that prove ivermectin did anything for COVID. And number two, I guess the problem was, which was like, this happens in every level of every industry, but they were taking the ivermectin and they were turning it into this crazy like subscription model and making millions and millions of dollars off of it. And like, you know, somehow raising the price to way more than it was if you could get it through a doctor. But I guess the problem was you couldn't get it through a doctor. The fact that you couldn't get it through a traditional doctor led to them carving out this niche to where they could, since they were doctors, they could create a company where they create the subscription model where they market to the people who, you know, that was probably the most polarizing period in my lifetime of American history was the COVID thing. So they had a huge base of people, a huge customer base, and the fact that you couldn't get it from a doctor was like, you know, all the stars were aligned for them to make tons of fucking money. So that was Dave's, you know, one of his biggest arguments to those guys, combined with the fact that there was no actual scientific reviews or like proof that stuff did anything.
So it's a very safe, off patent drug. So it should be very cheap if you can get it. But obviously doctors were like just scared to prescribe it, I guess, for their licenses or whatever, which is ridiculous. Like literally a Nobel Prize winning drug. And the safety profile is crazy. Like the wide range of doses that you could receive, like up to, I think, 2 milligrams per kilogram and even higher than that, and still have very minimal side effects. Like, first of all, it seems like something that should be at least tried out, especially because in all of a lot of the in vitro assays that were done for screening to see what could potentially stop spike protein from entering cells, like it did pop out multiple times across multiple labs as an option. So it seems like something that would have at least been attempted. And then if you look at the studies that did try to study ivermectin, the timing and the dosing was like so erratic that it was hard to actually draw a conclusion. But I will say from my personal experience, I'm somebody who literally will get sick if sickness comes into the house, from my stepson, from my partner. And they both had COVID. When was it? It was either earlier this year or end of last year.
Oh, wow.
I was taking ivermectin because I had like some stomach bug or something that I was dealing with. I was like, I might as well try it because it is shown to actually increase bifidobacteria in like the short term. So it can actually be helpful to remodel the microbiome. And it seems to like target essentially pathogens and parasites without harming like the positive bugs that are in the gut. So I was taking it. I literally didn't get sick. They were both sick around me. I wasn't protecting myself in any other way, and I did not get sick. So I really think if this study were to be done, I would bet there's a kind of like in preventative measures, you could take ivermectin and you could probably take it prophylactically, is what I meant to say, to prevent the infection to begin with.
Right.
Though I know other people who, you know, had the infection, started taking it, and still like potentially shortened the window of infection. Though it would be hard to say at an individual level. You'd need like a large scale data set to see
I would
if
be
that
interested in
actually
trying it too. Because in my household, it's my wife and kids if there's something that goes through the house, they get it first. I always get it a week later for some weird reason. Yeah. So maybe if I had it, that would help me.
I keep it on hand. I literally have it in my backpack with me because whenever I fly.
Let me get a handful.
Yeah, you got it. I'm happy to, because I literally, whenever I'm going to fly, I take it just in case I don't want to pick up anything on the plane.
Yeah.
And it just works wonders for me. Obviously I don't have the other control that says if I didn't take it, I would have gotten sick.
Sure.
But just from my own experience, I know that I tend to get sick when I fly.
If it's not going to harm you, and it's not harmful, there's no downside to it, then what's the hurt?
That's how I feel too.
Problem? And also, Mary Talley Bowden was prescribing it to tons of her patients, and she saw incredible results.
Totally.
And she had no incentive to do that. She didn't make any extra money from doing that. She got freaking outcast from her whole. She got kicked out of the hospital, and she was an outcast.
Yep.
After that,
she actually, I remember her talking about a specific case with somebody that was having very strong histamine responses after the jab, and she used ivermectin to help basically, I guess, clear up some of the spike protein that was in the system from the jab in particular, and that person responded really, really well, and it changed their life in a positive way. And that's kind of invaluable, especially when this drug is really not going to cause side effects in 99% of people. It's very well tolerated, so it seems like kind of a no-brainer, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was very sus that they were trying to ban that, and there was this overwhelming pressure from the power structures, the biggest companies and the government saying, no, don't do this.
Right.
Whenever that happens, you should have your red flags going up.
I totally agree.
And also in Florida at one point, they tried really hard. I don't know if they were successful, but they tried to ban monoclonal antibodies, but because we had that here.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then there was a huge push to get that banned. I don't know if they were successful or not. I never did any of that stuff.
That's crazy.
But I remember being in line to get that. There was like in St. Pete, like just 30 minutes from here, there was like huge parking lots at the stadiums where people were waiting in line for half the day to get the monoclonal antibodies.
It's almost like they wanted people to die. Right. You would say if like you had a cynical view. I mean, it's possible. It just seems like they were literally doing everything wrong, from like slowing down the science of like potential alternative therapies to like pushing the propaganda of the safety studies on the jabs and like hiding information about the contents of them. Like it's just literally at every turn they were doing something wrong. And I ultimately think it opened a lot of people's eyes, which is good, about like the shortcomings of our system. But it's hard to not think that it's nefarious at some level, I guess is what I would say.
It's hard to, especially if you have a deep understanding of history, you know?
Exactly. It's like naive.
What is this, Steve-O?
Is this the Hebrew characters?
I believe so.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Put your headphones on so we can hear it.
Okay.
This is on the Cosmos guy?
Yeah, this is
Adam?
This is the from Adam to Isaac Bentov is in the beginning, but then it transitions to this lady who's
It's his wife.
Oh, his wife. Okay. Yeah. So here, I'll go ahead and play it.
For eternity. So we want to see what's next. And so the moment you ask, again, the next picture is shown to you and explained. And what you see are more such luminous toroidal shapes appearing in the void. And as you approach, you see that they are arranged in a spiral. 7 universes per each rung of the spiral. This seems like a lot to take in at first, and you begin to count and you realize that there are 7 rungs to the spiral, which means that there are 49 universes. And on top of that structure, there appears to be a very luminous something, and as you approach it closer, this brilliant white light seems to have a shape such as this. And Ben, being familiar with the Hebrew language, looked at that and he said, no, I must be programming myself. This looks like the Hebrew letter Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And immediately the explanation comes. No, this is not a Hebrew letter. This is an interference pattern of 4 energies interacting on this level, on this cosmic level. And they create this pattern, which is a consciousness whose body this is. This consciousness contains the consciousnesses of all the 49 creators. In other words, consciousness is modular. As we saw before with the ducks, a more evolved consciousness, a larger consciousness will contain the lesser ones. As Ben was looking at all these things, he said, I'm just a tourist. I'm snapping pictures and bringing them back. I don't know what I'm looking at. And I'm just one of you all. We're all on this cosmic journey on a bus, except some of us have window seats and some have aisle seats. I happen to have a window seat, so I can share with you what I'm observing. So he had no explanations for these except that he was seeing something and then asking questions. So as he approached this Aleph a little closer, what he saw was that the front of it was a brilliant white light, and the back was dark, and it looked rather three-dimensional. It's a hologram. And there are 22 such forms, interference patterns, emerging from the luminous side, and they look exactly like the Hebrew letters.
That's crazy.
And he was explained again that these are interference patterns that were observed by seers in antiquity, and they incorporated them into the Hebrew letters, into the Hebrew alphabet, but they are there objectively to be observed. On the other side, the same forms emerge, but in a random, mixed-up order. And he was explained that these interference patterns are transducers of the Aleph energy down to the physical level. They step it down further and further to the physical level. And this whole diagram actually illustrates the law of the cosmic level, because what it's really saying that evil is simply ignorance of the law. The proper sequence of these characters is knowledge of the law, but a mixed-up order is ignorance of the law, which then becomes evil. And what is the law? And when you ask the question, you're shown. Close up, this is the structure. The Aleph breaks itself down into 3.
See that swastika?
I don't know if I'm buying this lady's shit.
You see that?
Yeah, I see that. That's like an ancient Hindu thing.
It is. It is. Well, have you ever thought about like why certain letters are the shape they are? Like who decided that and like what it means?
No, not really. What do you think it means?
So I think it's probably not random. I could say that.
Yeah.
Especially when we look at these very old languages like Aramaic and Hebrew. I mean, you got to think like all of these religious traditions, they have like mystical branches that were doing a lot of like deep meditative, maybe plant medicine work as well, that, you know, if they maybe saw things and they translated that into, you know, maybe using it to construct a language, it doesn't seem that far-fetched to me. It's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just so skeptical of the history of languages and shit. I've talked to so many people who study this shit their whole lives, and they all disagree on everything. You know,
there's no way to know for sure.
There seems to be a large. It seems to be like similar to medicine, where there's the group of people that like to stay in the lane of what's accepted by mainstream, and like there's outcasts. And there seems to be more and more outcasts that are, I tend to lean towards like they might be more onto something. And one of the things that I learned on a recent podcast we did with some people, these two experts in ancient languages, was that Hebrew is a lot more recent than we think. Greek obviously went back way farther, and there's no evidence of any Hebrew going back farther than like, I think it was 400, 500 BC, something like that.
Wasn't it Aramaic before that though?
I don't know. I don't remember. But Aramaic and Hebrew, they're all Semitic languages, right? And Greek was the one that was like in its own lane. And the idea is that, you know, if you look at all the texts that we have that are written on scrolls or on animal skins or on tablets or whatever, there's so much more in Greek. There's like philosophical stuff, there's poetry, there's comedy, there's medicine, there's legal stuff. And, you know, the oldest stuff we have in Hebrew was found in these jars in these caves in Qumran, and it's all religious. And if you even going back to like the Library of Alexandria, it was all Greek. There was no fucking Hebrew in that.
How do we know what was in it?
In what?
In the library.
I don't know. Let's be on my pay grade.
Because I'm like, if that all
I
got
know
destroyed,
is all the smart people tell me that.
I'm so curious, like how they would know that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they, from reading ancient texts, they realized that. Like it's just talked about, like what was in the Library of Alexandria, and you know what was happening. And there's like constantly there were scribes in there that were constantly like rewriting stuff because you know it was such a human environment. Scrolls would constantly be like just, you know, evaporating or like being degraded by the environment. But it's always been super interesting to me, like how Hebrew and Greek were in their own separate universes, you know, and Greek was such a deeper language. There was so much more. There was over 1 million unique words in Greek. Hebrew is only 7,000, which is crazy. And all the ancient Hebrew we have, there was no ancient Hebrew philosophers. There was no ancient Hebrew doctors or comedians or anything. It's all religious shit, which is just, I don't know what that means.
It kind of
it's just very interesting to me.
It makes me think that the people who knew how to read and write were probably in like a different caste of like the system. Maybe there was some sort of like a hierarchy, and like the common person just didn't even have any ability to read or write.
Yeah.
Versus maybe in Greece it was a little bit more homogenous or something. Yeah. Like maybe people were taught how to.
Right.
Language is just so mind-boggling in general because it's like I'm making these mouth sounds and you're interpreting them to know what I mean in your brain, and it's like who created like English, for example? We could talk about any language though. It's like who made the alphabet? Who decided what each letter sounded like? Who then taught that and disseminated it, and everybody just happened to agree? People don't agree on anything. Yeah. How do you get them to agree?
Right. And then
like
going back to Homer, like with the Odyssey and the Iliad and all that stuff.
Did you see the movie yet?
I haven't seen it. My dad just called me this morning and said it was great. He said he saw it last night.
I'm going on Saturday. I'm excited.
Going back to like Homer and all that, no one could read.
Right.
Everyone would sing. They would sing it. Like that was all sung in like hymns and like musical tones, and people would memorize all that shit because no one could read it.
Right, exactly.
Which is crazy. And then also, it's not pagnated or it's not like there's no spaces between words. There's no commas, apostrophes. There's nothing like that. It's all just straight words stacked. And like you can't go back and like memorize, okay, this was on page 345, paragraph 2 of this chapter of this book or whatever. No, it's just these giant scrolls of never ending texts.
Holy shit.
Which is like,
that's mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling.
Wow.
It really is. And you know, the fact that it was musical too is very interesting. That's another thing. There's tons of music in ancient Greek, written in ancient Greek. You know, there was like all these musicians who are writing about all this stuff. And
yeah. I mean, it seems like a musical tradition is something that's like been a thread throughout all of human history, essentially, because I think we use it as a way to remember things. Because when you put it to a tune, you're just more likely to be able to remember it in the future. Versus if you just like took the text, it would be very hard to remember that word for word. But a song, you can remember the lyrics to a song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing, you know, like the memory aspect to it too.
Yes.
Like people back then probably had way better memories because they didn't have to rely on storing all their memories on iPads and phones and their notepad and, you know, whatever. Like it wasn't stored on videos on YouTube where you could just save that, bookmark it. And
yep. Some things are use it or lose it for sure. And I think our brains are definitely one of those things where it's like different aspects, the learning and both the learning and the memory are like, you need to use it regularly.
I had this lady on who's a psychologist from Harvard. I think she was a psychologist, like a very high level psychologist. And she threw this theory at me where she thought that like when language was created, that was like a split in like the evolution of humans where we went from like intuitive knowledge to trusting the written word, which is by its very nature deceptive. Like the easiest way to deceive is through the written word, by being able to print lies or biases or whatever and paint them as truth. So I can read books about, you know, biology and, you know, neuroscience all day long. I'm not really going to know any of that, right? I just sort of like remember and understand the best I can. I can repeat it. But like that's not intuitive knowledge. That's like almost the opposite of intuitive knowledge. And she was making this case of like, you know, maybe that was the story of Adam and Eve, and the tree of knowledge and the forbidden fruit was like that deviation in the intuition versus trusting the written word, which is inherently deceptive. And we're so far down that path now. It's like, you know, the point of no return.
Yeah, I mean, it's
one of those things I think about a lot.
It's kind of like the split between, you could say like the intuition and the intellect, for example.
Yeah.
Like the intellect, it wants to have a grasp on everything, right? And wants to have certainty. When in reality, you can't be certain about anything. Like there's nothing that you could have 100% certainty on.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not something the ego enjoys because the ego wants to have like control and be able to have a grasp on things. So I think
right. And it's the same thing, like just like being able to write stories down on animal skins, like that's just a very primitive version of having the iPhone, you know, and that's going to dull certain senses. I'm sure there was, before we had the written word and we had to have like extraordinary memories and rely on our, whatever we call our gut instincts we have now, like maybe that was something that was back then, something on a whole nother level, like on steroids or something.
The thing about language too is it's so limiting. I was having a conversation earlier actually about psychedelic experiences in particular and how like they're so ineffable, and when you go to try to describe it, it's just like such a sham of what the actual experience was and like the profundity of it.
Yeah.
That actually makes me think that languages like Greek, for example, with such a diverse vocabulary would actually be a better approximation for reality compared to languages that only have a small number of words to encapsulate reality. Like you're inherently lying when you put things into words because they're limiting.
Yeah.
But the more options you have, the closer it is to the truth. Seems like. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know where that goes, but it's very interesting to see, you know, how this stuff evolves. And, you know, like what we were talking about earlier, talking to all these people who are dedicate their lives to studying these languages and stuff, like none of them agree. It's very, very, very strange.
I mean, there's a high level of interpretation, especially because like for the most part, the languages are dead. So they have to like use correlations to try to triangulate the meaning of certain things. And it's like, there's a lot of room for variability there, it seems, and like kind of individual interpretation.
Right.
So, yeah, it's very interesting to think about like how language shapes culture, I think, in general, and how maybe in particular English is positioning us to be more biased and more dogmatic. I think that's an interesting thesis to explore. Like maybe there's something specific about the English language that's problematic, or it might have some benefits too. I'm sure there's people studying these topics that's, you know,
maybe we need to become telepathic. We need brain chips.
Oh, no. No, wrong direction. But also,
Then we wouldn't be limited by language.
I really don't see how it would work, because just because you stimulate a neural circuit in my brain doesn't mean it's the exact same as yours. So like if you stimulate one neuron, that means this emotion in my body, and you stimulate the same neuron, like if you map it into your brain, it could be completely different, like if you trace it. So I really don't see how it would work telepathically, like to give you the same visceral experience that I'm having. Like I just don't see it as being possible. I don't know. Unless we're all clones.
You're looking at it from a very redocutionist point of view, though, right? Like you're looking at it from like a mechanical point of view.
Okay.
Neuron to
so
neuron.
How would the brain chip work?
I don't fucking know.
How does it work then?
I don't know.
I mean, it's being made by the hyper-reductionists, right? So
True. Theoretically, the way I've heard it described is like you'd be able to just project intention to people.
You could probably already do that though without the technology.
You think?
Actually, that's a Rudolf Steiner quote. I'm not going to quote it directly, but it's something like, human beings are going to continue to develop technologies that mimic technologies essentially they already have inside themselves, until they realize that they have these technologies inside themselves, or they're going to destroy the world. And which one happens first is anyone's guess. Essentially, something like that. But like everything is a projection of something we already have, which kind of makes sense, because like we talked about, all technology is an extension of our senses, of our own sensory capabilities that we already have. So like, obviously that capacity is somewhere within us already. It's just a matter of being able to cultivate it and like use it in like a specific way, for example. But like obviously like the remote viewing stuff, the telepathy stuff, I think it's not unprecedented, and it seems like it's a possibility for humans. Maybe some have a higher proclivity to those kind of things than others, but
yeah, definitely.
It seems like it's possible.
Yeah, they probably get awakened when you get out of, big cities and get into like the Amazon rainforest.
Maybe.
And you're surrounded by, millions of heartbeats and insects and monkeys and jaguars and all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
There's probably something that is unlocked.
I mean, I think the medicine man in the Amazon, basically when asked how they knew how to create ayahuasca from these like very diverse plants in different parts of the forest, they were like, the plants told us how to make it.
Right.
So it's like, okay. Right. That's cool. That sounds great. Like that's probably a skill that needs to be cultivated, and maybe only certain like the shamans in these types of cultures, like they seem to be tapped into something that's kind of otherworldly. Like maybe that information's coming through them. I don't know. They're also the ones that are using the plant medicines and like doing a lot of the deep inner work and the meditative stuff. And so like seems like they're kind of skills that one could develop if they were to kind of exercise them.
Yeah.
But
who was that person that we had on recently who was explaining us, I think it was a lady who was explaining to us this uncontacted tribe who has this like very basic language. You remember this?
Was this Melissa Ilardo?
No, this was recent.
Basic language.
This was very recently. This person, they were studying this tribe who had this like, it was like a very, very primitive language that was almost like so dumb they couldn't even believe it.
Was it Heather Lynn?
Yes, it was Heather Lynn. That's what it was. And yeah, she was making the case that they're like something about them and like the location they were in and how they were separated from the rest of the world. They, I don't know, they were like evolving on their own timeline or something like that.
I mean, it's pretty crazy.
I wish you could find the name of that tribe.
It's pretty crazy to think that there are groups of people that are living and have been living the same way for millennia.
Oh, yeah,
And then there's us and we're existing in parallel.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. We're living here talking on a podcast on YouTube while there's people running around naked, on some island somewhere throwing spears at shit.
Totally. Which is better? I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I really don't know. It depends on what you're optimizing for.
Yeah. I guess it's all about perspective.
Yeah.
But if there was a nuclear war, they would definitely be the ones that survived.
Absolutely. They're tapped into everything that they need to know to live on the land and like survive under very limited resources.
Yeah.
We are totally divorced from that.
Yeah, we are. Another one of your quotes that I loved from our first podcast. Yeah, I think you said that we're like equivalent to orcas at SeaWorld. Did you say that? I think you said
familiar.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like orcas, when they get inside these big tanks and they're not able to swim around, they're not able to hunt, they're not able to do anything like that, they get like super depressed, they end up going crazy, they
like
lose their
animals.
minds and they kill people, and
Totally.
it's fucking insane.
Yeah, it's like we're living in captivity. We literally are.
In captivity, yes, exactly.
I literally think the function of culture and society is to domesticate humans, in particular domesticate men, because non-domesticated men are the downfall to society, basically, because they will rise up and like overthrow whatever the power structure is. So literally the function of the culture is to basically just keep men in check. And it's really quite interesting that you see that kind of go in parallel with declining testosterone levels.
Yeah.
And fertility in both men and women, but like in particular in men. It's very interesting.
Was this it?
I found it.
This is the exact one she was talking about?
I'm pretty sure.
The Pitahan?
David Everett.
Pirahas? What was specific about, what did she say? Okay, here it is. Go down. The Piraha are a unique group of people whose language, culture, and worldview are strictly built around the principle of immediacy of experience, extreme vocabulary. The language lacks words for abstract concepts, numbers, colors. For example, there are no words for one or two only terms for a few and many. They also have no word for thank you and do not tell others what to do. So what is the implications of no abstract God? They do not have a supreme God. While they believe in spirits that inhabit the physical world, like the jungle or the rivers, they don't worship or pray to them.
He was a missionary and he lost his faith in his ability to convert them.
Oh, he was trying to convert them. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so when Everett was trying to tell him about Jesus, the Piraha asked him a simple, logical question. Have you seen Jesus? When Everett explained that he had never seen Jesus, nor his father or anyone he knew, the Piraha simply lost interest. They only placed the value on the verifiable, observable, and personal experience. That's fascinating to me.
Wow.
Because of the way they live, they're just more practical people. They don't have the privilege of, Jesus or religion or organized religion and all this stuff.
Yeah.
That was fascinating to me.
It kind of seems like, obviously, if you look at how cultures develop, they're developing in a way that is supporting the individuals that comprise the culture. So religion must serve a function, like organized religion is serving a function in most of the world for whatever reason. And their version of spirituality or whatever you want to call it is serving them in their context. But like, it makes perfect sense that wouldn't translate. Like, why would they wouldn't gain anything from believing in what he was saying?
Right.
Because it just didn't make sense to them, first of all. But then second of all, like, what are they gaining from believing that? They already have a spiritual belief system around what happens when they die or whatever else, then they don't need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of something that's like adaptable for like the way we live now, with cities filled with millions and millions of people.
Yes.
Who are like just connected to everyone all around the world at all times.
Yeah, and all simultaneously disconnected from everyone.
Right, but and it's only a small group of people too, and they're just trying to survive.
That's true.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with people in urban environments too is I feel like you can become so like disenchanted with humanity in general because it's just like, oh, there's so many of us, we're packed in this dense kind of space, and I feel like it almost leads to the belief that like humans are expendable in a way. And there's like a lack of like sanctity around the individual in some ways.
Like diffusion of responsibility.
That too, for sure.
Where there can be like a car accident with like a lady bleeding out on the side of the road, and somebody could just be on a phone call trading stocks and walk right by it and not pay attention.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like an interesting social experiment, honestly. And I don't know if urban living actually. It probably doesn't work in the long term, to be honest, because every time something catastrophic happens, you have to start over. And you have to start from the more rural, like agrarian or just like very pragmatic kind of context and environment. It's just kind of the way the cycle goes, I guess.
Yeah. So going back to what we were talking about earlier with like the Pergamon Press stuff and the peer review and all of the gatekeeping that happens in science, one of the things that was super interesting to me that is kind of in line with all of that I found very interesting was when Jack did that podcast with Andrew Huberman and Rick Rubin. And I think it was Huberman, or no, Jack might have said it and then Huberman confirmed it, that all of the medical textbooks in the neurology department at Stanford, like 90% of them were like proven wrong or out of date. And Huberman said that one of his colleagues, like one of the top neurosurgeons in the world, confirmed it, saying, yeah, that's true. They're all out of date. And a lot of them are inaccurate, but they just keep getting printed.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah, textbooks, they're updated maybe every decade, tops.
Yeah.
Tops. So like that information, yeah, for sure. They're learning things that's at least a decade, if not more, out of date and like behind the times, which obviously is a big problem if you're going into medicine and you think you're, at the state of the art cutting edge and you're actually, light years behind, especially with the pace that technology and innovation has been happening. Like there's so much that you're not learning. And obviously doctors, like, they're supposed to be doing continuing education and all these things, but for most of them, they're in so much debt that they're just trying to make enough money to survive when they get out of school. And they kind of stay on that hamster wheel as well for the rest of their career, because most of them are in like $200K in debt or more by the time they graduate medical school. And so they're just trying to survive when they get out. They don't have time to focus on learning and continuing their, intellectual understanding of the cutting edge of science and medicine.
Yeah, they get stuck in the rat race.
Totally. So the whole system is just kind of set up to keep doctors kind of just dialed into whatever they were taught and not like being curious and having. Also, the whole kind of criteria that selects for doctors to go into medical school, it's all about who gets the good grades on the tests, which means like who listens to authority, who can memorize information. That's what medical school is selecting for in their application process. So like that kind of an individual is also going to behave in a certain type of way when they get into the real world, which is also subverting or like submitting to authority. Following the status quo. And that's not exactly what you want in somebody who's going to be taking care of your health. You want somebody who would be thinking out of the box and kind of staying at the bleeding edge. And honestly, that's more of what like a scientist would be inclined to do versus a physician by the current training, at least.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like sometimes it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff because you got people on Instagram who are doing methylene blue eye drops sitting on the beach. And I think this person is crazy.
They certainly look crazy. The blue-ass eyes.
You said it's legit?
I mean, I don't know if it's legit. I think methylene blue has a lot of trade-offs. Maybe in certain cases and like circumstances it could have some value. I don't know if it's been studied intraocularly very well, but the product certainly exists and people do use it for better or worse.
It's just like, god damn, sometimes I feel like people are just go overboard with some shit.
They do. There's a lot of grifting. There's a lot of people,
so much grifting.
There's a lot of people who are just like desperate to feel better too and will try anything.
That's true.
That's like very sad as well because they tend to fall for the grift and like, they could be out a lot of money and maybe even worse off than when they started. So it's definitely like the Wild West online for sure in the health space. Yeah.
Do you still use the methylene blue stuff?
No, I don't use it regularly. I rarely use it. Maybe like on a flight I will use it, but I haven't in like over
So
it
has the similar effect to like ivermectin, for like it combats like viruses and stuff.
So not for the viruses per se, at least not to my knowledge, but essentially methylene blue can serve as an electron carrier when your mitochondrial electron carriers, let's say, aren't working as well. Maybe your engines are gunked up because they're there's a lot of deuterium around or whatever, mitochondrial toxins in your environment. So essentially methylene blue can come in and deliver electrons and kind of circumvent the blockade. But in people who don't have a blockade, it essentially just creates more chaos because now the electrons aren't going where they're supposed to. They're going on this other thing, which may be going, where it's supposed to or may go somewhere else entirely. Yeah. So I think it's kind of just playing with fire. Methylene blue in general, especially at like high doses.
Oh, wow.
At super low doses, you could probably get away with it, and it does have some like nootropic effects as well, and like MAOI effects as well, MAO inhibitor. So that's why it can't be combined with those drugs, for example.
It can't be combined with what drugs?
The MAOIs, the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which
what
are
are
certain.
those? Give me an example of one of those.
I couldn't tell you the name. Maybe Steve can look, but it's basically their psychiatric medications for like depression and other issues. You could be given an MAOI. And also, if you've ever seen some pharmaceutical commercials, a lot of times they'll say, do not combine with MAOIs, blah, blah, blah. It's because like essentially there can be some synergistic effects which could overload certain neurotransmitters and create issues.
Whatever these
Common
things are.
several MAOIs are currently utilized in clinical practice. Tranilpromine. Never heard of any of this shit. You got to give me like the brand name.
The trade name.
No.
Parnate. I don't know
Brand
that
name
one, but
Parnate.
yeah.
Non-selective irreversible monoamine oxidase inhibitor.
Yeah, I don't know about that
Yeah,
one.
what are like the common names of these drugs though, Steve? Like what are the
maybe search like common MAOIs or something.
just type in common MAOI drug brand names.
Let's see.
Okay, I gave you the same shit.
Nardil, Marplan, Selegiline.
For depression, Parkinson's.
Yeah, okay.
I heard that you can't do. Somebody told me you can't do. You can't take methylene blue and do DMT.
So that's
Or no,
interesting.
maybe no. It wasn't DMT. It was maybe it was DMT. Somebody said it's not safe to take methylene blue with DMT
Okay.
or 5-HTP.
So is not methylene blue, is DMT a monoamine? I don't remember the structure.
DMT, monoamine.
So basically,
Maybe it has like there's some sort of an effect with methylene blue.
it is a
some kind
monoamine. So basically, it would prevent the breakdown of DMT. But anyway, people combine like Syrian rue.
so it'll make it last.
It makes
longer.
it last longer.
Oh
yeah.
shit. Okay.
Because it's inhibiting the enzyme that breaks it down. And so like in some cultures, I believe they use DMT containing plants. Actually, in ayahuasca, there's a plant that contains an MAOI and a plant that contains DMT.
Yeah.
So they combine them
That's why it lasts so
intentionally
long.
to make it last.
Right,
Exactly.
I
Because
see.
the gut is full of monoamine oxidases. So if you're eating something with DMT and it gets rapidly broken down, so you don't like start tripping balls.
Right.
But if you inhibit those enzymes, then you can. But yeah, basically methylene blue also acts as an MAOI. So it's relevant for certain drug interactions and stuff like that.
Did you read that Patreon on Jack's Substack about, or not Substack, on his Patreon about the Russian scientist who put the copper ring around a plant or something like this, and it
yeah, I know what
stopped
you're talking
cancer?
Around a plant?
Yeah, a plant. It said plant.
How did that stop cancer then?
I don't know.
Do you
It
put
said
the copper ring on?
It said it had a tumor.
Oh, the plant had a tumor.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. First of all, I've never heard of a plant with a tumor.
So yeah, plants can get tumors. They can get growths.
And it said that there was like
growth.
a study on a bunch of different plants, and they gave them all the same cancer, and they put like this copper ring around one of the plants, and it just like thrived and it grew.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but there's definitely some interest in electroculture in different parts of the country and in the world, where they're essentially using things like copper coils, copper rods. And I think it's kind of a little woo, but I think they describe it essentially bringing down more etheric energy into the ground that allows the plant to grow more. And it actually does seem to do something. I don't know if the mechanism is correct.
Yeah, I've
or
heard
whatever,
people talk
but-
about copper before, and
Yeah.
like selling copper as like a gimmicky health device or something.
Yeah. Well, Jack has been talking recently about a lot about magnetism. And there's like a website called, I think, Magnet RX, where you can get like certain copper jewelry with little magnets on it that like he recommends wearing while you're flying, for example, to help, I guess, keep the proper magnetic signals going on in the system when you're in this like very ungrounded, high EMF environment.
Oh, okay. So like if you're on an airplane or something like that,
Yeah.
that would explain why all the pilots wear those copper bracelets.
Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe. Have you ever noticed that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, pilots.
Really?
Most pilots that I've met, I maybe it's just something that I noticed early and I started paying attention to and looking for it. But I had noticed a lot of pilots wear those copper bracelets.
That's so interesting. I'm going to look tomorrow now.
Yeah. Didn't we also do something where we had a guy in here telling us about this and we were like looking it up and we found out like this crazy thing, this crazy was a proven study of the effect of copper? That might have been Jeffrey Drum.
I would say, gosh, what was it? Was it Tarot? The Museum
No. It was in this studio.
No, I don't recall that.
Huh. Type in medical benefits of copper.
Like wearing copper?
Yeah, wearing copper, like copper jewelry.
Maybe say like wearing copper or copper jewelry.
Like copper wearable jewelry, medical benefits.
Let's see what we got.
Anti-inflammatory and joint soothing effects. Scientific studies show little evidence that copper is absorbed through the skin in quantities large enough to treat conditions like arthritis, but many wearers report a positive. Okay, maybe it's a placebo or spiritual.
Yeah, but I mean that's assuming the mechanism is through copper absorption. It may be something completely different, right? So like I don't even know how they're setting up these studies to begin with.
Right.
So like it could be biased in thinking that it's absorption of copper when it's actually like something bioelectric, for example.
Oh, interesting. So they could test against it by using like a different type of metal alloy and seeing if it has a similar benefit.
Or like putting on some sort of transdermal copper that's not like a bracelet, but like, or taking a copper supplement or something and like getting the blood levels to the same. But maybe like the benefits wouldn't be the same.
Right.
Because they're saying it has to do with absorption, but I don't think that has to be the case for sure.
Very weird. There's so many weird things.
Yeah.
That I don't know about.
I know. People are doing like lots of interesting stuff out in the world.
I try to tell everybody I know to stop wearing sunglasses, and no one ever listens to me.
What? Yeah, I know. I saw a lot of people wearing sunglasses here, but also just in general, people love them.
Yeah.
In Europe, it was even worse when I visited last year. They were like, it's like fashion, I think.
Yeah.
I was in Prague, so I think it was like a fashionable statement or whatever to wear sunglasses. But I'm like, whenever I see somebody wearing sunglasses, I just think they look geriatric. I literally think they look geriatric. I'm like, ew, that's such a turn off.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the problem around here is there's like a lot of people that fish and they need the sunglasses to see through the water.
Right.
You know.
Well, that's at least a functional, not like just fashion.
Yeah.
I could respect that more.
Yeah, but if you're going on a run, I mean, you should take them off, right?
Yeah. And your eyes are even more sensitive the more you wear them. So you need to like...
Right.
If you don't want to need them, then you need to go without them and like build... It's not like a callus per se, but it just regulates the amount of light that your eye's expecting to receive. So if you're constantly in this dim environment, also huge implications from a circadian, mental health, metabolic perspective, because the brightness of the light coming in through your eyes is really important from a circadian perspective, which also when you're exposed to super bright light, like from the sun, we're talking like 100,000, 200,000 lux or more. Most indoor environments are like less than 1,000 lux. And if you're putting those sunglasses on, you're reducing that lux dramatically. So the brightness of that light is now not able to interface with your eye and help to stimulate your metabolic functions, your neurochemistry to be more alert and awake and like higher mood, and also could potentially like inhibit your circadian rhythm as well and make it a little bit more distorted. So you're, during the day, your body's expecting to receive bright light.
Isn't it also true that if you're getting like a large exposure of sunlight to your skin, but not your eyes, that's when you get more skin cancer?
I mean, nobody's done that study, but I think it would be an interesting one. Sunburning, skin cancer. Yeah, essentially because that POMC mechanism I was talking about earlier.
How can we do the study?
It would be very easy to do.
Can we do it on rats or something?
We can do it on humans. Like we can just see for burning. Like if we're just talking about burning, I feel like it's not going to be that unethical. Like set out 10 people that have the same Fitzpatrick status. Though obviously there's lots of variables here. Like the food.
What's it called?
Fitzpatrick skin type is basically like how pale or how dark your skin is. Yeah. There's other variables that will dictate how quickly you burn though. So you might need a pretty large N or like sample size. But like what your diet's composed of, like if you're eating a lot of processed foods or you're eating, more whole foods based diet.
Is there any correlation between people who burn easily and skin cancer?
Yeah.
So if you burn easily, you're more predisposed to skin cancer.
Especially certain types of skin cancer. I think the data on melanoma is kind of a little bit ambiguous because there's some studies that say like your history of burns is increasing your risk, and there's others that say that it's actually decreasing your risk. So that's kind of interesting. But when it comes to the basal cell carcinomas and the squamous cell carcinomas, the burn history does seem to have some sort of association. Yeah. Could be direct, could be indirect, could be both.
Why aren't there no studies being done on this stuff? There's no money to be made?
I mean, the jury's already out on sun equals bad, right? So I feel like there's just no motivation to do the research. Obviously, I don't think people fully buy that. Some people obviously put on all the sunscreen and the sunglasses, et cetera, when they go out. But I think most people generally know they feel better when they're in the sun. I don't think a lot of people know that you feel good because you're getting UV light through your eyes and on your skin. Then it becomes, if you know that, it becomes obvious why you wouldn't want to wear sunblock and sunglasses when you're going outside. But
yeah. So do you like, as soon as you wake up in the morning, you go outside and watch the sunrise every single day?
I don't always get sunrise because I've been doing a lot of Latin dance lately. So sometimes I'm out late wearing my blue blockers, but I am out late sometimes. But regardless what time I wake up, the first thing I do is go outside, like whatever time it is, so that I'm at least getting that signal into my eyes. Ideally, it is sunrise because the ratio of blue and red is really special at that time of day to help optimize the cortisol response. And then UVA rise comes shortly after, and that helps to anchor in the circadian rhythm in tissues locally in the eyes and the skin, other tissues as well. And then midday, obviously, is when UV is at its peak. So from a nitric oxide production perspective, POMC, vitamin D perspective, that's like when the sun is the most concentrated. So you can maximize the production of those things during midday. And then sunset is kind of a repeat of sunrise. So you're able to kind of get 2 chances each day to receive those benefits.
Right.
And so.
And another thing I argue with my friends about all the time too is like, all the people, is it true? I don't remember if we talked about this the first time, but is there a correlation between where the sun is in the sky, like the circadian rhythm, and like when you should eat, like how the digestive system works?
Yeah, so from a circadian perspective, there's actually pretty cool data on this. I mean, essentially showing that breakfast should be your main largest meal of the day. That's when your metabolism is, assuming you went out and got sun first thing and everything is ramped up and you're able to clear and use those nutrients the most efficiently. Midday, your appetites, if you're in the sun, is going to naturally be a bit more suppressed because one of the factors cleaved from POMC that's produced from UVB light is alpha MSH, which essentially binds to cells and receptors in the hypothalamus in the brain and inhibits appetite and increases energy expenditure. It's actually the same mechanism by which, or at least one of them, that Ozempic works by. So Ozempic actually stimulates POMC production in the brain and leads to the production of alpha MSH as well to inhibit appetite and increase energy expenditure. Obviously, there's lots of other trade-offs to Ozempic use. I think most people probably have no idea that essentially that drug is mimicking what you could naturally get from just spending more of your day outdoors in the sun.
Really?
Yeah. So that's like a natural way to help yoke your metabolism and appetite to the environment. So if you're out in the sun midday, typically if you like go to the beach for the day, for example, people generally don't feel super hungry while they're there or like afterwards. You tend to feel pretty sleepy actually afterwards because you're like dumping melatonin. Melatonin's produced in the mitochondria in response to near infrared light. Different from the melatonin that's produced in the pineal gland at night in response to darkness. So the mitochondrial melatonin essentially gets stimulated by the abundance of near-infrared light from the sun or from incandescent bulbs, et cetera. But the sun is definitely the best source. And it's produced in the mitochondria, but then that melatonin can also spill over into the bloodstream. And there's some pretty cool work being done with like little biosensors, kind of like a CGM, but looking for melatonin. And TNF alpha, and I think a couple other things. This is work by Scott Zimmerman in collaboration with, I think, a university in Texas. I can't remember which one. But essentially, they showed after you're in the sun, right after that, there's like a huge burst in melatonin concentration in the bloodstream.
Yeah.
That's kind of from this mitochondrial source.
And that makes you sleepy?
It can make you sleepy. I mean, I think most people feel exhausted after a day at the beach. They just want to go to bed.
Yeah.
It's pretty normal. And that's from that melatonin depot versus the one in the brain, which is naturally released when it starts to get dark at night. So you need darkness at night and absence of blue light at night in order to get that circulating melatonin to rise from the pineal gland versus from the mitochondrial melatonin. But we're meant to be getting near infrared light all day long from outdoor environments. Even if you're in the shade, green plants reflect a ton of near-infrared light.
Yeah, that's what you're telling me.
Yeah, so we're really
even if you're like behind a screened-in area, you still get it.
Totally. Yeah, so we're meant to be receiving that, and we're completely deficient in that near-infrared frequency indoors, which is a big problem because that is actually directly stimulating mitochondrial function, mitochondrial water production, internal biophoton production as well, and it's completely unnatural to never be exposed to that. Even if we think about like the wintertime in Northern Europe, for example, there's still some daylight, And whenever there's daylight, there's going to be an abundance of near-infrared. UV obviously wanes with the seasons and latitude, but near-infrared is constant. Whenever the sun is up, you're supposed to be getting it. And so the fact that there's none of that indoors is very, very problematic and like antithetical to what human bodies are expecting to receive, because that's essentially allowing our tissues to maintain their hydration status through that mitochondrial water production.
Right.
And aging is inherently a dehydration process. That's why you see older individuals, they like lose their plumpness, they get like the sagging, wrinkling skin.
Yeah.
They're literally desiccating. And that's not because they're not drinking enough water, it's because their cells aren't making enough water in their mitochondria, because over time, mitochondrial engines just become less efficient in general. And so that means less energy produced, but also less water produced as well.
Entropy.
Yeah, exactly. So we're basically, our mitochondria are constantly fighting against entropy, but over time, that process becomes less and less efficient, and then ultimately entropy wins. But
right.
Yeah.
What is your overall take on this crazy GLP-1 explosion that's happening and everybody getting prescribed them? I know I know like 25 people off the top of my head that I talk to regularly that are on it. It's crazy.
I mean, I think I think we're going to be horrified what their health looks like in a couple decades.
Really?
Yeah. I know Jack thinks it's taking decades off people's lives.
Really?
Yeah.
What if you're already like 70? Does it matter?
I mean, I think, again, everything is informed consent, right? So, like, I don't think anybody is being honest. I don't even know if they've done long-term studies.
How long have people been taking these GLP-1s?
A few years now. I feel like at least, like at this scale, maybe the past, like, 3 years or so.
But haven't they been studied for, like, other use cases, like for people with diabetes and stuff in the past? And people have been, diabetics have been taking them for decades, right?
I don't know about decades, but a while for sure.
Find out when
find out when
GLP-1s first started being tested and used on humans.
Maybe for like diabetes, because I know initially when these drugs came out, they weren't giving them to just people who wanted to lose 15 pounds.
Right.
It was like for morbidly obese and diabetic individuals, which like in that context, you could say, okay, maybe the risk-benefit ratio is towards they would benefit from taking it, maybe. Although obviously they would benefit even more if you gave them all the lifestyle advice to allow them to correct their issues at a fundamental level.
GLP-1 was discovered in the 1980s. First human testing was 87, and it was tested for investigating potential treatment for type 2 diabetes. You could probably translate this better than I could.
I mean, it's just
keep
saying
going
they're
down.
testing it, proof of concept.
Was that 2005, such as first received FDA approval to treat diabetes in 2005?
Okay, yeah. It definitely, I don't remember when Ozempic came out exactly, but it's certainly post-COVID is when it's really like exploded. And now like, I don't remember how many, 1 in 10 people or something.
It's so crazy how you see, like, I see all my, like, people I know on social media all of a sudden just turning into melted candlesticks.
Yeah. They're also, I mean, you could kind of make the case that they're addictive as well.
Right. Really?
Yeah, because they're also stimulating this POMC cascade and producing beta endorphins as well. So they're getting a bit of that. Actually, anhedonia is one of the side effects, potentially, of Ozempic, where you can feel pleasure from nothing. Like, not from food, not from sex, from nothing. You just feel nothing.
And you get pleasure from that?
No, you don't get pleasure. You just feel like flatline. You can't feel pleasure.
Oh.
So that's interesting. Let's see. I don't know if it says anything.
I'm still looking for long-term studies.
Yeah.
This one cites 120 weeks. That's
short.
That's not very long.
Like a lot of these people okay. The other thing about these drugs that's very problematic is like they don't have any sort of plan for these people. It's just like take this drug and stay on it indefinitely.
Right.
Obviously, they're incentivized to have that model because then they make the most money as well.
Yeah.
But then like the moment people come off these drugs, like, I have no doubt the weight starts coming back immediately and maybe even gets to a point that's worse than where they started. So they're super incentivized to stay on these things.
Why does Jack think it's going to take decades out of people's lives?
So my understanding of this essentially is what the GLPs are doing is kind of breaking an inherent circuit that exists within the body that's like a feedback loop.
Okay.
So like I mentioned before, in the environment, UVB light is naturally meant to come in and stimulate the POMC production and give us these kind of outputs. So what the GLPs are doing is they're telling our biology that there's an abundance of energy available and that, essentially that means it can be in the form of sunlight, so high UV light, it can be in an abundance of food in the environment, because it's mimicking the same pathways that foods would naturally stimulate, GLP-1.
Right.
And like they would stimulate satiety, just like actually Signals was designed to do that as well. To stimulate GLP-1 maximally and everything, but actually by giving you the nutrients you need, not by tricking the body.
Right.
So what the GLP-1 drugs are doing is they're tricking the body into thinking they have an abundance of energy. And so then that's shutting down appetite and increasing energy expenditure. However, the problem is there's actually an energy deficit. And so these are very conflicting signals. So essentially the body thinks it has ample resources to do what it needs to do, but it's actually completely depleting resources. So from a bioenergetic standpoint, it would make total sense that, you know, you're not only just losing fat, but you're potentially breaking down your energy producing engines like your mitochondria, for example, and having major ramifications in the long term. And I don't know if anybody's actually looking at that.
I would imagine there'd be major short-term ramifications for that. If you're burning through, if it's faking your energy and you're burning through all that, I would imagine you'd feel that in like a week.
Well, I mean, I don't know about a week, but obviously a lot of people are losing a lot of lean mass in addition to fat mass.
Yeah.
So like bone mass, muscle mass, tendons.
I heard that there's one that increases muscle and melts fat, and it's called...
It's the combination of Reta and GLP-1.
Reta.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
That sounds like a wonder drug.
It does sound like a wonder drug.
Anything that sounds too good to be true is, for sure.
Right. What does this say, Stephen?
All right. So, the studies are not very long. So 2 years.
2 to 4 years.
There's a 2 and a 4 year trial. And then there's an ongoing study that started in 2023 where they will start studying each person like for 10 years. So that just started like a few years ago.
And then in 10 years, they're going to be like, oops. We were wrong.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do with all these trillions of dollars?
I know. Whatever will we do?
So it said, but also says 20% reduction in major adverse cardiovascular events.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about morbidly obese,
what is that compared to though?
That's a good question. I mean, they're control
reduction
group.
Compared to what? Like, was there a control group? I guess.
So whenever you do studies like that, typically there's a control group that's given a placebo injection, like a saline injection, versus the people who actually have the real one. And then they look at the outcomes. So I would guess that the people with the placebo probably know they're placebo because they're not going to start rapidly losing weight at that same level. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you could make the argument that maybe the placebo isn't a full control group, actually.
Yeah, so I had a friend who was in here the other day who had just how old did Matt turn for his birthday? He turned 60? Is that it? No,
55.
50. He turned 55 or something like this.
Yeah.
And he came in here and for some reason we got on the topic of this and he's like, oh yeah, I'm on that. I'm like, really? I'm like, I guess there's so many people I see every day that are on it, but I shouldn't be surprised. And he was explaining, I'm like, I heard that you lose like all these like desires, like they go away. And he's like, oh yeah, that's true. I'm like, even your sexual desire? He's like, yeah, unfortunately, but I got a lot more medications to handle that too. So now they can make money selling that and the Viagra at the same time. So it's just like, it works hand in hand for them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's also stimulating the dopaminergic system, and the dopamine is what makes you feel like rewarded and good and like you did the thing. So like, congrats, like your body is giving you a reward for doing whatever it is.
Yeah.
This is just giving it to you immediately through the endorphins. Like you're not in the sun, you're not completing a hard task or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like the dopamine slot machine, like those rats that like would just constantly hit the cocaine in the cage.
Yes.
Obviously, if they're in a community, they didn't do that. But like if they're isolated rats, they just keep hitting the darn thing until they die.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah. And it's just so bizarre to me how there's, you know, all these people are trying. There's so many peptides that are available now to try.
Totally. Yes,
and like, you know, they sound amazing. I tried one, the sleep peptide. I forget what it was called now, but it's supposed to make you have like crazy REM sleep. And I didn't really notice anything.
Was it Panaelon?
Yes, that was it.
I've heard about that. So that's one of the Kavincin peptides. There was this Russian guy, his last name was Kavincin, like decades ago. He was basically studying these different like natural peptides produced in the body and then like making them synthetically or isolating them and then giving them to people and seeing what happens. So yeah, I think I tried Panaelon like years ago. I didn't notice anything either. Yeah, maybe it has to be injected. I don't know.
But like, yeah, the peptides are like the craze right now. Like everyone is talking about how many peptides they're on. But like,
and so many of those are like the research chemicals too. They're not, there's no like third party testing and you don't really know what you're getting.
Yeah. So but it's just like a peptide. It's just like a fancy word for medication though, right?
So like, a peptide is just a small protein. So it's just a string of amino acids.
Right.
But
it's basically a medication.
I mean, some of these are made in the body naturally as well.
Yeah.
But obviously you could be mega dosing them, which is aphysiologic. It's not mimicking what your body would naturally make. Also, the route of administration could be different. Like, for example, with like BP157, it's made in the gastric cells within the stomach. So if you're injecting that, for example, that may not be like physiologic because it's meant to be produced in the stomach and like into the GI tract and not into your arm. Yeah.
Huh.
So
I've used that before, like on tendon areas that I've like messed up, and I feel like I really noticed a difference.
It might work.
Placebo.
No, it might be placebo. Also, when you're injecting it, you're creating a microinflammation that may stimulate immune function and help to repair the tissues as well. It's hard to say, but that doesn't mean that like nobody should ever use any peptides. But I think mostly it's the Wild West, and we don't really know the ramifications of potentially down the road. I'm at least inclined to think that the ones that are naturally produced in the body are probably less harmful than the synthetic ones, but that could also be not true as well, depending on the dose and how they're administered, et cetera.
Yeah.
What have you been paying close attention to all this stuff? Like I haven't. Any of the stuff that like Bobby Kennedy's been doing recently with all this stuff, like pushing stuff through FDA with the peptides and all the psychedelics and all that.
I'm so like disenfranchised with everything.
Yeah.
Everything politics. I'm just done.
Yeah, no, it's just I feel depressing. The same way. I feel burned out by it.
Me too. So yeah, I know he's been doing some things to help with peptide legality or whatever, or like access, but yeah, I don't know.
Nothing ever changes in the swamp.
Something like that. Yeah. Oh my God, I was listening to somebody, who was it? I think it was JD Vance on
Joe Rogan.
It was on Rogan, yeah. And he was like, "Oh, DC is called the swamp because it's built on swampland." And Joe's like, "I'm pretty sure that's not why it's called that."
I caught that.
That was hilarious.
There's lots of swamp creatures roaming around there.
That's why. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was crazy. That was a crazy one.
Yeah, I know. So like I was like very hopeful too before this like Trump 2 presidency, but it just all went to shit.
Yeah.
It's like worse than I could have ever imagined.
Worse than anyone could have ever imagined,
right? Yes. It's a 180 basically on the campaign promises.
180, total 180.
Yeah. So I'm just checked out from all of it.
Yeah.
Just focus on myself and
milking every last penny that they possibly can. You know, it makes Hunter Biden look like Chuck E. Cheese. The amount of money that he was making compared to all the money that they're making off everything.
The new thing with the Truth Social, they're making it like paid access or whatever. Did you see that? Mm-mm. Because what they're selling it as is like a Truth Social post from Trump can affect the stock market. So now he's going to start making his posts specifically about like geopolitics or about like international trade behind a paywall, because that is a huge benefit to stock traders.
Oh my God. What a scam.
It's crazy.
It's like the meme coins, Trump coin.
Yeah, it's just like that, right?
Everything's a money grab.
Everything's a money grab. It's insane.
Yeah,
it's never ending.
It is. I just try to focus on what matters most in my own life and trying to help people around me. And
that's a good way to look at life.
Yeah. Otherwise, like focusing on these like more global scale activities, it's just kind of fruitless.
Yeah, it's fruitless and it's stressful.
Exactly.
Not healthy.
Yeah, exactly. It's not healthy. And like all forms of stress are harmful to our biology, so we have to manage that as well and like save our stress for things we actually enjoy.
Right.
Like working out or cold plunging or sauna, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this.
This was so fun. I feel like we covered a diverse array of topics.
Yeah, we were all over the place.
Yes.
Tell people about your podcast and all the stuff that you do and where they can find you.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Undoctrinate Yourself. I haven't posted recently, but I have a podcast episode coming out this week with Aaron Siri.
That's the lawyer?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the lawyer, like the vaccine injury lawyer. And yeah, I like to just have like nice, different, diverse array of guests that are kind of thinking outside of the box and like pushing, kind of just like pushing into a new paradigm and like bucking the status quo. And so that's my podcast. And then I'm mostly active on Instagram at Dr. Alexis Jasmine. And I post a lot of free content on there. People can learn about science, especially in the realm of circadian biology, quantum biology, mitochondrial biology. So if any of that sounds interesting, you can check out my page for a bunch of free stuff. I have a couple ebooks, a couple more coming. I have my course that I started by talking about, which is like the mini undergraduate degree, essentially, that we're still working through. It's coming up on a year, but we're just going to keep going until I feel satisfied with it. I have a new course coming out soon that's kind of like a mini course on like how to implement the information in like quantum and circadian stuff, like protocols basically that are bite-sized and digestible. And if people want to learn the science, we're going to do some of that, but that's mostly in my other courses. We're mostly going to focus on like the action items and what you can do in your day-to-day life to feel better and think better and all that stuff. And so that's kind of what I'm working on.
Oh, you got Patreon questions.
Oh,
All right.
yay.
We do.
Yay.
Cool. Well, we'll link all of your stuff below for folks to find it. And thanks again.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Good night, world.